later on. But first, all bets are on. It's day one for legal sports gambling here in the Commonwealth, at least in person at the 3 casinos. We'll open lines to hear what you make of this moment in Massachusetts history, for better or worse.
I'm Marjorie Egan. After that, great news for Boston soccer. The city will score a new team with National Women's Soccer. That's in addition to new teams for San Francisco and Utah. We'll get the full picture from NBC sports anchor and reporter Trenny Casey. It's all on the way ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Embattled New York Republican Congressman George Santos has voluntarily recused himself from serving on committees, according to GOP lawmakers. As NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports, this comes in the wake of outcry over various fabrications Santos made about his personal and professional biography.
Multiple Republican lawmakers confirmed that Santos told colleagues he was voluntarily stepping aside from his committee assignments. This happened during the GOP's weekly closed-door conference meeting. Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene said Santos felt there was too much drama surrounding him.
Mr. Santos' statement in there was just saying that he spoke with Speaker McCarthy and made this decision on his own.
Santos has come under fire for deceiving voters with an extensively fabricated biography, including false claims about his work and family history and questions over the source of money Santos claimed to loan his campaign. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, the Capitol.
President Biden travels to New York City today to again highlight a rail infrastructure project. It's linked to the new bipartisan infrastructure law. NPR's Scott Detrow reports Biden has been touting the law's benefits.
All week, President Biden is traveling up and down the East Coast, taking an extended victory lap for bringing back life to long-stalled tunnel projects. It's part of his strategy of highlighting the real-world impact of major laws, knowing in a divided Congress, more big legislative wins may be in short supply. Today, it's New York, where the 2021 infrastructure law will help build a new tunnel under the Hudson River. Still, the victory lap may be premature in a sense. Construction will take years, possibly a decade. Scott Detrow, NPR News, Washington.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas today in the West Bank. Blinken is urging Palestinians to resume security cooperation with Israel. The Palestinians suspended this as violence has grown between Israelis and Palestinians. Blinken says he is keeping some U.S. diplomats in the Middle East to try to help reduce Mideast tension. Weather forecasters say a winter storm is depositing a sheen of ice across much of the South today. The site FlightAware says that more than 10,000 flights have been delayed so far today. National Weather Service meteorologist Mark Chenard says several states are facing dangerously icy conditions.
We're expecting several rounds of freezing rain to impact portions of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, even into Tennessee.
There are ice storm warnings up now for most of western Tennessee. Up to 0.3 of an inch of ice could form. Forecasters say that's enough to break power lines and cause deadly traffic accidents. On Wall Street, the Dow is now up nearly 100 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in studio today. It's now legal to bet on sports here in Massachusetts, but for now, you can only do it at the state's 3 casinos. And it's not just sports. Want to bet on the Academy Awards? You can. Want to bet on Joey Chestnut eating more Coney Island hot dogs than anyone else? You can do that, too. In-person betting became legal at 10 this morning, while mobile betting is expected to go live sometime in March. Bettors must be at least 21 years old. Massachusetts hopes to make between $35 and $50 million per year on the gambling tax revenue. Activists on Martha's Vineyard gathered in Chilmark for a silent vigil in memory of Tyree Nichols last night, who was killed by police in Memphis. About a dozen gathered at the Beetlebug Corner on Sunday, the same location where activists knelt for over 9 minutes after George Floyd's death. Sunday's event was organized by the island's Black Lives Matter chapter. It coincided with the protest vigils held around the country following the release of a video of the fatal beating of Nichols. The Vineyard Gazette Gazette is reporting the story. Discussion afterwards centered around a need for change over policing and race in America, and attendees called for police reform. In sports, it is another day off for the Bruins and Celtics. Both are back in action tomorrow. The forecast mostly cloudy today, high near 40. Cloudy and 20 overnight, sunny low 30s tomorrow, partly sunny low 40s on Thursday, and get ready for an Arctic blast of cold air just in time for the weekend.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. For more than 95 years, supporting efforts to promote a just, equitable, and sustainable society. More at mott.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library. Woo! Wow! Thank you. Big hand today. We are also streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Maybe because we have a lot of special guests today. Could that
No,
be?
it's because we have 3 colleagues from Western Massachusetts Public Radio, and they started applauding, so everybody
Okay.
started applauding. Thank you. It doesn't even count. We really appreciate it. Did you say we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH
Yes, I did.
News?
Yes, I did.
And the real reason it's a packed house today, as Marjorie said, the governor is with us from noon to 1 for her first Ask the Governor. We're really looking forward to Maura Healey joining us. And then 1:30 to 2:30, we're extending a half hour today till 2:30 for Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu. As Henry Santoro just said, at 10 o'clock today, an hour ago, the books are open. You can place a bet finally on that Euro Beach Soccer League game you've been waiting for. Or Pesapallo. Is that how you say it? It's Finland's national sport.
I don't know.
I don't even
Jim.
know what it is. And the Super Bowl, of course, and essentially any other professional sports. In addition to that, Nathan's hot dog eating contest, which is disgusting, is open for wagering, as are non-sporting events like the Oscars, the Emmys. So you can really up the ante, lose all your money on whether you want your favorite program, whether it's snubbed or not. There are a few things you cannot bet on. High school sports, chess, and esports are all off limits now. It's a big moment for Massachusetts, which has lagged behind neighboring states and the rest of the country to get legal sports gambling on the books. Are you reveling in your opportunity to head down to Encore, MGM, or Plainville for the experience, or are you sticking with your North End bookie for now, waiting until the option for digital betting comes online early in March? And how do you feel about the fact that Massachusetts is already, please listen to this, the biggest spender on the lottery per capita in the country? Is this how you want your government funded? Do you worry, as I do, or am I just being, I guess, a buzzkill? 877-301-8970. I want to repeat that statistic.
What are you worried about, Jim?
What am I worried about?
Yeah.
There's too much. I know you're going to ridicule me.
I'm not going to ridicule you.
Well, why'd you ask the question
Because
then?
I just wanted to explain to people why you're so upset about this.
Because there's too much reliance on state-sponsored gambling to fund our I understand all the arguments. People are going to Connecticut or Rhode Island or New Hampshire. I understand all that sort of stuff. We are, by the way, we're not just number one on the lottery. We're number one on the lottery. The amount of money that is bet by every woman and child in Massachusetts on the lottery alone is 3 times the national average. At some point, you say, fair taxation is the way we should fund government, not by people. You know how these sports books are profitable? People lose their money.
People
That's
do
the
lose
only
their
way
money.
it works.
But it's a idea that maybe you'll get lucky. You know what I mean?
Maybe you get lucky. And it's more,
You go to
the likelihood is
7-Eleven,
greater that you will be
spend
unlucky.
$20 and maybe you'll get lucky and
Yeah.
you can dream about your house in the Hamptons or whatever it is you dream about. So I think that's part of it. But the addiction problem is people talk about that a lot, especially if you can sit at home and bet online. It will get even probably more problematic for those
Do you
people
know
who
who,
have a problem.
by the way, the lottery, which is all I know about, do you know which part of the population spends the most money per person in the lottery?
Poor people.
Low-income people.
That's right.
And wealthy people spend almost nothing.
Well, because the poor people need the money more
Yeah.
than the wealthy people who already
Are they
have a
getting
lot.
the money?
Well, some of them are.
No,
Every
they're
once
not.
in a while.
877-301-8970. The reality is it's here. Again, you can only do it in casinos starting at 10 o'clock this morning, an hour and 9 minutes ago. Starting at approximately March 1st, you can do the thing online. And what the experts say, I've read a lot about this, in all the other jurisdictions, I think the 36 other states plus D.C. that does this, 80% of the gambling is online. So I assume this is to give a head start to the brick and mortar kind of thing. So how do you feel about the ability to gamble on virtually everything except high school sports and a few other things as of 10 o'clock this morning? 877-301-8897. You ever bet on a sporting event in your whole life?
No.
Okay, good. That's it. Okay.
Well, I'm not a big gambler, although it was fun to go over to the Encore Casino. We went down to the Plainridge Casino once. That wasn't so much.
Not once. We went the second day.
Okay, with the second
Who'd
day.
you meet, Marjorie?
A guy who was out of work who was putting $100 bills into
the
the
slot
machine.
machines.
I couldn't believe that. He was
$100
out of work. He was a construction guy, so he wasn't
Carpenter,
like
I
exactly
remember.
bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And Plainridge was a little. I thought it was not that much fun. Encore is fun. You can take the boat over there. You can take the boat back. It's all dolled up. There's all these restaurants over there. So that's kind of a fun place to go to, even if you're not a big gambler, and just hang out and watch people gamble.
Well, one of the nice things I have to say, because I don't want to be only critical of this in terms of the casinos, 2 of the 3 casinos, I don't know if the third one's going to do this, they have a free shuttle service directly to debtor's prison, by the way. So you lose all your money, you can't pay your bills, and then you get on the bus and you go right to debtor's prison.
They did do all these studies. I remember before Plainridge and Encore and all of them came into being in Massachusetts, saying people that were closest to the casino often had the
within
most
50 miles.
serious
Yes.
gambling problems. But again, when you go down there, they have all these signs all over the place that if you are over betting or you just lost all your money, it's a good idea, because when you just lost all your money, that's when you realize you're in big trouble with your spouse or your family, and maybe you need to go get some help.
Do you
I
remember?
kind of like that. You don't have that in bars, Jim. If you have a bar thing at the door, given the number of the nearest AA sponsor, if you had too much to drink that night,
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Marjorie, you probably forget that when Deval Patrick signed off on casinos, which I think I would argue is probably the thing he should least celebrate in his 8-year tenure. Do you remember what you and I did because we thought we were good journalists? We should actually check out a casino. What did we do?
I don't remember.
We drove to Connecticut.
Oh, we did. We drove to Connecticut.
I don't remember
That's
if we
right.
went to Foxwoods or the other one. One of us said to the other as we were leaving, that was like visiting a Civil War hospital.
Well,
that's essentially what it was. It was old people on ventilators. There was smoking. Literally, like the smoking was this high.
You can't do that in the Massachusetts
No,
casinos.
you can't.
You can't smoke? No, I don't think the smoking allowed. Or
Okay.
certainly it's segregated. But in the casino down in Connecticut we went to, it was kind of like a smoke-filled room, Jim. But they have the discounted food, which is another big deal that people really like.
Okay,
Let's
so here's
start
the deal. We're going to say gamble responsibly is the message.
Gamble
it is here to
responsibly.
stay. I guess that's the thing.
And
you're
I think
supposed
you
to say.
want to, if people want to spend $5 every week or $15 every week and hope that they
What
can
are you,
become
nuts?
millionaires. Well, it's hopeful for lots of people. It's hopeful, Jim. They're not going to make
Okay, I got to
money.
ask you one more
They're not
question.
going to go to law school. They're not going to go to medical school.
Excuse me. On the lottery alone last year,
I know.
the state,
Chelsea,
excuse me. No,
Chelsea
I'm not
spent
going to
all
do that.
the money.
I'm going to do that later.
And Weston spent
Okay,
none
exactly.
of the money. And by the way, Chelsea and Weston, Chelsea's a kind of a poor community.
Okay.
Weston's a really
Where did the
rich
$1 billion
community.
come from the lottery that went to cities and towns? How do we get the billion?
It came from less affluent people.
No. It meant that somebody lost $1 billion.
That's
Somebody's, so that cities and towns could get the $1 billion.
But you know what? They realized they were probably going to lose it
They
when
did?
they went to the 7-Eleven. The only thing I don't like is you're behind someone at the 7-Eleven who's ordering like 20 tickets, and you could be there forever trying to buy a pack of gum.
And a can of cat food is what they're buying also with it. Jerry in Brockton, hi.
Good morning, Jim and Marge. How are we doing today?
I
Very
think
well.
we're
Thank
excellent.
you for
Thank
calling.
you for asking. What's up?
Oh, thank you for having me. First I have to start off I'm the worst degenerate gambler ever. I'm
That's
a
great to
hypocrite.
hear. Thank you.
I occasionally play the lottery.
Yeah.
That being said, I hate the idea of the sports betting.
Good.
The kids, it's not good for... I have a 20-year-old son who's already talking about gambling, and he's always just been into sports just for the pleasure of it. Now they're looking at it as an income, and I think it just spoils the whole attitude of enjoying sports for enjoying sports.
Okay, so Jerry, you have the same position I do, and so I will pose the question to you that everybody poses to me. Well, if your son doesn't gamble at Encore or at Plainville or at MGM in Springfield, it's MGM in Springfield, right? Is that what it's called? MGM in Springfield, he is just going to go across the border to Connecticut, Rhode Island, or New Hampshire. How do you respond to that? And they're going to get the money, so he still loses, but our state doesn't benefit. How do you respond to that?
See, I don't think it has anything to do with that. It's fucking the teat of the sports
Beautifully
kind of
put.
junkie that just enjoys watching sports. Now we have to make it more quote unquote interesting and throw money at it.
Got it.
And let's face it, it's a loser.
Jerry, I'm with you. Thank you
Hey,
for
Jerry,
the call.
how do you feel about gambling on college sports?
Are we allowed to do that? We are, right?
I think it's high school sports.
I hate that also.
like March Madness, yeah.
I think sports should be off limits. I guess I'm a Puritan, again, a hypocrite, but I just think sports should not be tainted by the gambling thing.
Jerry, thanks. We got it. Jerry, thank you much for the call. We appreciate
Paul
it.
from Worcester has a question.
What is it?
What's the over-under and how many times Jim interrupts Marjorie today?
Well, because I care a lot about this topic, and you really don't care about the topic. Is that a good point?
I have a certain libertarian streak to me. You want to tell everybody how to live their lives,
I do.
Jim.
That is correct.
And I'm happy with people making their own decisions about how to live their lives. And if they want to gamble, they're going to find a way to gamble.
So, you know, we talk about that restaurant.
They're going to take drugs. They're going to find a way to take drugs.
What's the name of that restaurant you took me to that was so delicious near Fall River that we talk about all the time? What's the name of that?
It's Magoni's.
Magoni's. What do they have on the tables?
They have Kino.
Yeah, so the beauty is, while you're eating the Italian food out of a can, whatever it is, you can also lose your money while you're having dinner
we have
at
all
the Kino
my
thing.
family events down there.
That's
I take
good.
a lot
That's
of
great.
grief from my family when you ridicule Magoni's, which is a lovely restaurant.
By the way,
in Somerset, on the water,
it is
overlooking the mighty Taunton River.
Let me be clear. I'm not just. A lot of people like Chef Boyardee. They do, and if you're into it, it's a really fine restaurant.
It is a very fine restaurant. Lauren and Alston, thank you for calling.
Hey, Lauren.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So what I would say is I grew up in Florida, and aside from my dad kind of being cheap and getting us lotto tickets for Christmas presents instead of really being thoughtful, we had Florida Lotto contributions that went straight into our state school scholarship. I actually got a 3-quarter scholarship.
Wow.
For being like a marginally good student to any state school. So I think if we invested back into
there you go.
Using that,
yeah.
If you're gonna, I mean, if the state is going to capitalize off of younger people who are going to be using this, then I think that we should be contributing to their education directly. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's Massachusetts, and we're all for people doing whatever they want to do, or like the right to do what they want to do. So we should be at least, I don't like sports gambling. I'm not a fan of it, but we are the state, Boston is the city of independence, and being able to do what you want to do, it's just going to be taxed out the wazoo, which is what it should be.
Absolutely,
That's
Lauren.
a pretty good
that
call,
was a
Lauren.
great call.
Thank
that
you.
was a great call.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
they're doing something good down in Florida, because Florida's kind of been struggling as of late, hasn't it? By the way, some of the facts our staff put together for us. New York betting revenue last year, $1.7 billion. That's a lot of money for the state of New York. Illinois just in second, $606 million. New Jersey, $595 million. So that's a lot of money, Jim.
It is a lot. I mean, it's a lot of money, and a lot of it would go to another state. I mean, that argument's good. Here's a good one from Dan from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Can we bet on if Jim gets caught taking food from the pre-made foods in Whole Foods? I assume you can. I assume there's any kind of wager other than high school sports.
A lot of
and
people are
esports.
betting on you, Jim, to do this, that, and the other
Apparently
thing.
they
So
are.
you yourself could be funneling thousands of dollars to the state coffers.
By the way, I'm going to do it. I mean, are you not going to? I mean, this is the fraudulent part of this. I am going to bet. I don't think I'd go
On the
to a
Super Bowl?
casino. If it was online, I'd go. I'll bet on March Madness probably.
Yeah,
the
March Madness would be fun to
NCAA
bet on. Yeah, that's
basketball
right.
tournament.
Yeah, that would be fun to bet on.
But I'm not going to do it online. You know what I'm going to do to bet on it?
Yeah.
I'm going to send a check to Charlie Baker because he's head of the NCAA by then, and let him place the bet for me. Do you believe, by the way, we haven't talked, do you believe he is going to be the president of the NCAA?
Well, I guess they have a lot of problems with the NCAA, and I think Charlie Baker, most would agree, did a pretty good job here as the governor of the Commonwealth, so I bet he'll do a pretty good job running the NCAA. Maureen on the road, thanks for calling.
Hey there, Maureen.
Hi there.
Hi.
I am calling to put in my plug for Gamblers Anonymous.
Great.
Because I have multiple relatives whose lives have been ruined by gambling, and I just feel like this is just going to be another way for lots of people to end up in that position. And it makes me really sad because it's, and I understand people have the right to do what they want to do, but it's just like so many other things that it can become addictive. And I encourage anyone who finds themselves unable to control their ability to step away from it, to reach out to Gamblers Anonymous, which has helped my relatives get their life back.
Maureen,
And,
why do you think that happened with gambling for your relatives? Was it the closeness to where they could gamble? Was it the lottery in Massachusetts? Was it going elsewhere to sports gamble? What do you think was going on?
Well, for one of my relatives, it was, stress from life, wanting to escape some stress from life, and she then a casino opened on her commute, and she would just pull in there instead of going home.
Yeah.
And for another one, it was, tied up with lots of other addictions with drinking. And this one loved horse racing. And it was exciting. It's
it is. I know.
The same thing that like jazzes up people's brains for so many different addictive behaviors. And but Gamblers Anonymous has really helped my one relative. So I don't have the contact information because I was on the road at Nuss.
Maureen, before you go away, you sound like you know what you're talking about. I mean, I support everything you support here. But, what was the name of the guy we were fairly friendly with who's the head of the the Gaming Commission for years and years? What was his name?
Oh, Jim,
He's a friend of ours. Whatever.
Steve Crosby?
Steve Crosby, yeah.
Crosby.
Steve Crosby. And we talked, I don't know if you remember, Maureen, shortly, maybe when the first casino opened, there's this thing. I know it's at the Encore because I've seen it. I know it's at Plainville because we saw it when we went that second night. There's a little sign in a table when you enter. It may have changed a little bit since then, where you can get information or what. However, and this is a question for Maureen, if you know, it would seem to me, and I'm sure I said this to Steve at the time, the people most likely to have a gambling problem are the people least likely to go to the table to say, I've got a gambling problem, and I want to make sure I don't gamble away my rent.
Why do you say that's true?
Because they have a problem, because they have an addiction.
Well, but I think a lot of people who have addictions, there's a point where they say, this is too much. I mean,
then why'd they go to the casino?
Well, a lot of people in AA talk about hitting rock bottom. I can see where you would be. You could be at a casino and you had just blown it on your rent. You have to explain to your children or your spouse or whoever it is. I think that's the perfect place to have those kind of things. And I'm not sure that nobody goes to them.
What do you think about that, Maureen? Oops, we lost Maureen.
Yeah, we lost Maureen.
I don't want to be, the thing she said, other than the addiction thing, which obviously is a huge deal, there is a thrill. I mean, even if it's sort of like I buy lottery tickets.
Right.
I usually buy you a lottery ticket when it's $500 million.
Powerball.
Whatever it is, Powerball.
Yeah.
I do give lottery tickets for Christmas because it's a nice, cheap thing. You can give tons of
Christmas
people.
stocking.
Kind of thing. And it is sort of exciting. If people could keep it under control, I'm okay with this thing. The problem is that a lot of people can't keep it under control.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people can't keep liquor under control. Mm-hmm. People can't keep drugs under control. People can't keep food. There's a lot of addictions going on here, and I'm not a psychologist, obviously.
You're not a psychologist?
No, but I think addiction is often having to do with an addictive personality rather than necessarily the particular thing you're addicted to.
By the way, if you're not watching this on television, when Marjorie was taking off addiction, she said liquor, drugs, and then she did her eyes wide and she said food, meaning... Thank you. I know what you're
there's Overeaters Anonymous. I mean, I know people that have had wonderful experiences going to Overeaters Anonymous. A lot of that 12-step stuff, which many millions of people say has been a very important thing for them. Tim, the shoe guy from Worcester. Hi, Tim.
What's up?
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I've been an alcoholic since 1987, a dry alcoholic, I like to say.
Good for you.
I only gamble 3 times a week. It's on a Friday night. I get a quick pick for Mega Bucks, Mega Millions, and Powerball, but I don't look at the tickets until Sunday morning. And
really?
I actually used to buy it from a package store, which is kind of funny. I thought that was kind of like an irony. I would actually buy them in Hopkinton, where I used to run the marathon. So I have a lot of superstitions going on there. But once I won $2,500, and so that's what I do. I just do it once a week. And the reason why I say I'm the shoe guy is because I tell my boss, if I hit on Sunday, we'll close the store. I'll give you 10% more than the year before.
Hey, Tim. Tim,
Yeah.
you got to tell that story next time because your
we got a
connection
bad
is atrocious.
connection.
Next time you win
But you know
$2,500,
something,
you
Tim?
can buy a new phone.
Some of the best
Thanks,
people
Tim.
I know are people that have been in AA for a long
Yeah.
time. I mean, they're just wonderful people. Look at Marty Walsh, talked about drug addiction,
How about
alcohol
his
addiction.
opening line at the Democratic National
I'm an
Convention? I'm an
alcoholic.
alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, nothing more
wow.
impressive than listening to Marty Walsh talk about his own recovery. Becky from Westwood.
No. We got to take a break.
we have to take a
Becky,
break.
but before we take a break,
Yep.
a texter just said, I just walked by the Fox News screen in my office, and your, meaning Marjorie's, interview with Senator Warren is the current topic of conversation, and you, Marjorie, are identified as a reporter. It's on CNN.
Yep.
It's in the Washington Post.
Yep.
We may play this later. This is when Marjorie asked.
Jim is pretty upset about
Well, I'm
this.
upset because I didn't ask the question. Let's face it. I mean, everybody knows. Marjorie said, are you going to support Biden? Yes, I am. Are you going to support Kamala Harris?
Yeah.
She hesitated. She did put out a statement the next day.
Yep, she did.
However, she did hesitate. There are panels on CNN, panels on Fox News, and all because of your
There you go,
question
Jim.
there.
I tell you, I'm ahead of the curve there.
Maybe you are.
You told me not to ask the question. You know what?
No, I did. Don't
ignored
do
you.
this.
I asked
That
it
is
anyway.
totally and
Okay.
completely untrue.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. At noontime, we're going to be joined by Governor Healy, and at 1:30 to 2:30, Mayor Michelle Wu. It's a twofer. They're going to take our questions and yours. Again, we are broadcasting live. You don't need tickets. You don't need a reservation. Just show up here if you want to see the mayor or you want to see the governor. Boston Public Radio at the Boston Public Library.
News, culture, conversation.
The value of different perspectives.
GBH's All Things Considered with Arun Roth.
The more voices we have, the more diverse voices we have, means the more perspectives we have. When that is not there, that's a whole range of voices that then you are losing.
Weekdays from 4 to 7, only on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and National Grid, providing access to electric heat pumps which offer heating and cooling for businesses of all sizes to help them achieve their sustainability goals. You can learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future. And the Bach Center, presenting author and On Purpose podcast host Jay Shetty on his first world tour. Love Rules. One night only at the Bach Center Wang Theater, February 22nd. Tickets at bachcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor joins us at noon to 1 in person here. The mayor joins us in person here, 1:30, 2:30. Marjorie just said you can call or text and ask a question of either, which you can, but the phone lines fill up pretty quickly. If you come to the library, there's a microphone about 20 feet to my right where Brendan, I think, one of our colleagues, will be staffing it. And if you've got a question for the governor and the mayor, you can stare into her eyes and ask her the question directly.
Listen to this. This is from Kate from Ridgefield, in Connecticut, where they already have sports betting. She says, I live in Connecticut. Every other ad during sporting events is for online betting. Even my kids have noticed and commented that we should start betting. And then this is from Beth in Newport. Sports betting in Tito. She's talking about Tito Jackson opening the marijuana store in Boston. So she's worried about people getting high and blowing their loot. And she also points out, Jim, and you know better about this than I do, that buying a lottery ticket must be done with cash and sports betting can be done with credit cards?
I don't know the answer. I thought that, can someone check this? I thought that you had to use a debit card because it was cash.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
No, I don't think they allow credit cards. We'll check in a second. That is a big. But having said that, what the person just said, in Connecticut.
Yep.
So come March 1st or whatever date online gambling is allowed. March Madness, the NCAA is on or whatever is on, and you're watching the game and an ad comes up. Do you think the average person who probably wouldn't bet otherwise is going to say, I'll throw $5 at it. I'll throw. I mean, that's.
You ever go down to Gillette Stadium to watch a football game down there, and when your kids were little?
Yeah.
Nonstop ads for Cialis and Viagra and all those things. Your little 8-year-old son, what's that Viagra stuff, Mom? You know what I mean? Maybe they shouldn't do that.
So your kid took it at 8? Is that what happened?
He wanted to be ahead of the curve,
so to speak.
Becky
in Westford.
Hi.
By the way, that is true.
Non-stop ads.
How about the commercial? Is this Cialis where you throw the football through the
hoop?
Love that one.
No, through the tire. Through the tire. That's right.
I'm sorry, Becky. Take it away.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I have someone close to me who's addicted to online gambling. And I've written a book on this.
Oh, really?
And I did a lot of research. Yeah, I was so pissed off at the industry that I did a lot of research and thought I need to build awareness about this. And so I have a self-published book out there.
What's it called?
It's called Trapped in Paradise, Paradice.
Becky, where was this person doing the online gambling? Was it any particular...
In his room.
But I mean, but on what?
On a laptop computer?
No, but I mean, what was he betting on? Was he betting on sports games in other states, or was he betting on...
I think everything.
Everything.
I think poker. I think sports betting.
Yeah.
And this particular person could blow a lot of money in a very short time, overdrawing bank accounts. It didn't take much.
Well, Becky,
the one piece... It's a very scary industry.
Yeah, let me say two things. One, while you and I tend to agree, even though you know much more than I do, I should have said this up front in the spirit of fairness, the majority of people on every single poll that was taken prior to legalization supported legalization. You and I are the outliers. The good piece of news in terms of spending more than you have, I guess, is Jamie, our colleague, just checked. Under the Massachusetts state regs or law, bets cannot be made by credit card, but only debit card, which means you can only spend what you have in your account, which may be more than you should, but at least there's a limit there.
But Becky, I wonder, are we to assume then that you think that we should not be legalizing sports gambling? Do you think it's a bad idea?
I think it's a really bad idea.
Yeah, okay. Becky, thank you.
Unless there's, extra services provided for it. But for an online gambler, they cannot turn on their computer or laptop without getting targeted ads. To them.
That's bad.
Like
well, unfortunately,
in a bar.
The horse is out of the barn, and of course, I guess people are betting on it too. But in any case, Becky, thanks for your cautionary tale there.
For the call. Trapped in Paradise is the book that she said she's written about this particular subject. 877-301-8970 is the number. You can call or text at that number. Sammy from Melrose, thank you for calling.
Hey, Sammy.
Hey, guys. Oh, sorry. I got a cold.
Oh, that's okay.
But Anyway, long-time listener. I love your show.
Thanks.
Thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
But I just felt I had to call because I understand that, yes, if you have a gambling addiction, it can be bad. So I think that people that have that, they definitely should have resources to get as much help as they can. But personally, I've been betting on sports since like 2010, and like anything else, if you do your research and you know what you're doing, you can make money on it.
You got to be kidding me.
No, I'm living proof of it. I make money. I don't make all of my money, but I've made a consistent income from betting on sports. But it's not betting because I do my research, I have a system, and I know what I'm doing. So
but you would agree, Sammy, the vast majority of people who do bet lose, or else there wouldn't be sports gambling, right?
True. But what I'm saying is that
if you do your homework,
exactly. I don't want the entire conversation to be framed as if it's just some big scam, because it's like anything else. It's like investing in the market or real estate. People, no, it definitely.
Well, no, I'll tell you why it's not. Because Sammy, until last year, I think I'm right, the stock market has gone up an average of 4 or 5% every single year, with maybe the exception. With the exception of 2008. So most people are winners on the stock market. Most people on state-sponsored gambling are losers. That's by definition, right?
I definitely understand that. That's not what I meant. I just meant that just like in the market, if you don't know what you're doing, you can lose all your money.
That is probably true.
You can have consistent income with betting on sports. And it's like with any other field. If you know what you're doing, if you do your research, if you treat it professionally, you can make some money.
Sammy, thanks for the call. No, we got it. By the way, Tom, previously from Lexington, says, I'm wondering if I can put in a wager for Jim becoming the most improved camper for a record third year. For those who are new listeners, I was not just most improved camper at Camp Anabar in Maine, which is Rubino backwards. I was most improved camper 2 years in a row, which was totally humiliating.
Well, it was humiliating.
No, that's
Jim.
not an applause line. It's the opposite of an applause line, but thank you.
It was very sad. It was an early tragedy for Jim.
How many people in the audience, we should have done this. Raise your hand. If you support sports gambling in Massachusetts, raise your hand. Oh,
wow.
A bunch of buzzkill people. I love this.
We have an anti-sports gambling.
This is so great.
Well, listen to this.
Thank you for
we
that.
We just got a good text from someone who's what you should be if you're going to gamble.
Yeah, what is it?
She says her name is Alita from Woburn.
Yeah.
She used to take her mother there to Foxwoods once a month. Her mother loved the slots. She thought it was a terrible waste of money, but she slowly caught the bug after hanging out with Mom. She said, I have no interest in sports betting, but I love going to the Encore. It's pretty and bright. The hotel's awesome. Once I've lost $100, I can go home to Woburn, which is 20 minutes away.
Can I say something? I'm so glad you read that, and I wish I had said something. People who don't have an addiction, if they decide I could either go spend $100 on dinner
or $200
or at a play,
yeah.
I'm going to go to Encore or go to Springfield or go to whatever it is.
Plain Ridge.
And I'm going to set a limit. Plainville.
Whatever it is.
And set a limit at $100. That's my night of entertainment. I am 100% fine with that. I'm worried about people who can't. That's the bottom line. But that's a very good text.
That's a very good point. I think a lot of people are like that. Do we have time for one more call here? We don't have time for one more call.
Thank you for your calls.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I think we're going to talk with Governor
Brian says the audience is anti-gambling because everybody else is at the casino.
Okay.
Good line, Brian. Is that our Brian who said that? Thank you, Brian Bell. That was very good. That's totally true.
Coming up, we're going to talk with NBC Sports' Trenny Casey. She's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be joined at noon by Governor Maura Healey for her first Ask the Governor, and by Mayor Michelle Wu at 1:30. She's done a few of these before, but she's going to be here for a full hour.
Next time on The World.
Sì, ma poi scusi, questo lo dico io, ma che ne sanno gli irlandesi di come si beve il vino?
This Italian talk show host is asking what the Irish know about drinking wine. You see, Irish authorities plan to put health warning labels on Italian wine bottles, pointing to a link between drinking alcohol and cancer. Italy sees it as a direct threat to its economy, its culture, and heritage. Our story on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, dedicated to environmental research to mitigate the effects of climate change and committing to power the campus with 100% renewable energy by 2032. umass.edu/sustainability. And Trinity Rep, presenting the world premiere of By the Queen. You can rediscover one of Shakespeare's most complicated and thrilling characters, Queen Margaret, on stage through February 12th. Tickets at trinityrep.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will be with us in less than a half hour. The mayor in about 2 hours at 1:30 for an hour to take your calls, texts, etc., etc. Joining us first, though, is Trenny Casey. She's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, also a regular BPR contributor. Hello, Trenny Casey.
So you're telling me all these people aren't here because I'm here today?
They are. They actually are. I think there are two in the back, actually.
So, Trini Casey, you're a sports reporter. What's the buzz in the sporting reporters world about gambling?
We are psyched about gambling.
Really?
I've already paid, this morning I already Venmoed Tom Giles as sort of our resident gambling expert. He's been doing a gambling show for about a year. And he knows what he's doing. I don't. And so in our show note today, somebody said, Trenny, what's the first bet you're going to place? And I looked up yesterday. I'm a huge Milwaukee Brewers fan. I would give just about anything for them to win a World Series. And so it was like plus 4,000 for them to win a World Series. So I was like, I'll put $50 on them. I'd win 2,000 if they win, whatever. And then this morning I was like, Marquette's having a pretty good year. What's the odds for Marquette to win a national title? Plus 4,000. I was like, I'll put another $50. Maybe I'll hit on both.
Have you really bet $100 this morning?
$100 already today. What's up, everybody?
There you go.
What's up, everybody?
There you go.
She's a Wisconsin kid, for those who don't know, by the way.
And I'll be honest, I don't really know much about gambling. I have actually pitched, and I hope we can do something with it. I don't think legally I'm going to be able to bet actual money on my show and do betting while I'm on the air, but I don't understand it. And it has become a huge part of sports television and sports broadcasting. And also for us in an industry that you guys are well aware, I know people think TV people and working in journalism is super glamorous and you make all this money. You really don't. And part of the reason salaries have consistently declined is advertising.
Yep.
And to be quite honest, there's a lot of money to be made when you partner with a DraftKings or a FanDuel. And this could, quite frankly, this could keep us in business. And this could keep us profitable and keep a lot of people in work.
Well, that's a good reason, Jim. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Jim.
I think I'm going to bet $50 on how many hot dogs Joey Chestnut can eat before he throws up.
Disgusting.
How about that? That is fairly disgusting.
So what are you going to bet in the Super Bowl? Philadelphia Eagles, that's
my
Jim's
home team.
Kansas City, I think they're pretty close, but Philadelphia's got a slight edge.
They do. The Eagles have the slight edge, mostly because I think they've got a little bit better of a defense, despite what you saw Sunday from Kansas City. And they're also healthier. Like Kansas City has suffered a number of injuries. Patrick Mahomes, everybody talked about, we're going to hear ad nauseum over the next 2 weeks about his ankle and his heroic efforts and yada, yada, yada. About, how the Lord healed him, because I'm sure God really cares who wins the Super Bowl. But the Eagles, to me, I'm rooting for the Eagles. One, because I guess I'm just sort of like, all right, I'm already sort of tired of the Chiefs. Sort of probably the way people were tired of the New England Patriots, right? Like you're just always there, you're always winning. I like what Philadelphia has done. They've built around Jalen Hurts. This was sort of an unheralded quarterback. And I don't know. I guess mostly it's just that I'm tired of the Chiefs. Like it's not super scientific. I don't know if I'm going to place a bet on the Super Bowl though. I will be honest, you guys were talking about when people will go and how they'll place bets. I'm sort of more excited for the ways to do it online, right? Like put a $5 wager here, a $5
that doesn't start till
wager.
After the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it doesn't start till after the Super Bowl. The reason I placed 2 bets today is because our resident gambler, Tom Giles, is we're doing something live from Encore later today in a couple of our shows. I don't get to go, but Giles will be there, so I asked him if he would do it for me.
Can I ask you a question that's probably unfair? I'm a huge, even though I'm rooting for the Eagles because I'm from Philadelphia, I'm a huge Mahomes fan.
He is really easy to like.
He's the quarterback for Kansas City. He has a high ankle sprain, whatever that is, and plays.
Well, that's the same.
That's my question.
Injury that Mac
He
Jones
plays,
had.
and his short run plus a penalty is the reason why Kansas City's in the Super Bowl and Cincinnati is not. On the other hand, the local quarterback has a high ankle sprain, and he's out and he can't play. Is it unfair to compare?
It is only because of the timing, right? So if Mac Jones, let's say the Patriots were like they were in the divisional championship trying to go to the AFC championship, he probably would have played.
Okay.
You would have, it's terrible to say this, but you would have shot him up with something in his ankle. You would have taped him up. And if you watch that game against Cincinnati, he was not mobile at all. He was hobbling around. He got intense treatment all week. I'm not sure, I'm 99% sure that Mac Jones would have done the same thing, rather than trying to heal it so that if the team is good when you return, then you come back healthy and you're not doing further damage.
Can we do one more football thing? Everybody listening to the show has heard a name that none of us had heard, unless you were in Buffalo until recently. Damar Hamlin, who was the guy who literally died briefly on the football field, is making a pretty dramatic comeback in terms of his health. We read a story in anticipation of you coming today, which I sort of knew but didn't know the details, about how shabby the treatment is of young football players who've given their whole life to this, who become professionals, who are in their first or second year before their pensions and healthcare vests, get career-ending injuries that not only are career-ending in some case, but life-altering at 22 years old for the next 50 years of their 60 years of their life. And the NFL does virtually nothing for them unless it's a high-profile case. Will this case embarrass the NFL enough that there'll be some reforms, or is this a one-and-done kind of deal?
Well, it has to be collectively bargained, right? So everything that these players are agreeing to. So to just kind of give you background, if you don't understand what happens in the NFL, you have to be fully vested in the NFL to get a number of their benefits. And you have to play at least 3+ years in order to be fully vested. And even in that, that's like lifetime health insurance, which is a huge benefit, right, as we all know, because health insurance is tough to come by. And then if you're fully vested, you also get a prorated pension that starts now. It actually starts a little later in life. And it's about I think last time I looked, it was $43,000 or $45,000 a year starting at retirement age, so later in life. But what happens if you go out and you get hurt in a training camp practice, your first year with the team, and you're not fully vested, you haven't even played a game yet. And that's what this story is about. These dozens of players who have not just career-ending, as Jim said, injuries, but they also have injuries that make it difficult for them to work, earn a living.
Yeah.
And if we're being honest, this is why I have such an issue with college sports and have such a mixed emotions about the name, image, and likeness ruling that has come out and the way that it's sort of filtering down to other sports is because for a lot of these kids, especially if I'm being honest, for a lot of male basketball and football players, school is secondary. They, and even now, I think we're going to talk about this story, even in some women's sports. I mean, I just read a story about the Harvard hockey coach who at times would tell, her players, no, you're not studying for that, or you're missing that lab. You got to come to practice. And sports becomes their number one. They're not student athletes, they're athlete students. And so for many of these guys, they're not prepared for life after football. They don't go to classes in college to learn how to get a job. For a long time, they weren't even allowed to have internships or work jobs because they didn't want the schools looked at it as possible influence, right? From donors, or they would get favoritism. But what that does is that stunts their professional growth. And even if they could get an internship, if you're a big-time college football player, you're lifting all summer. You've got practices. Stuff starts in late July because the season starts in August. Tell me when you have time to go do an internship the way I did, where you're working 3 or 4 times a week. Now at least they're paid, but usually unpaid. And so what ends up happening is these guys aren't, quite frankly, prepared for life after football. And then if you don't have a lucrative career in football, and I'm talking even if you make league minimum and you're in the league for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you still have to work at some point because you're probably at the start of your career making between $500,000 and $750,000 or $800,000, which I know seems like a lot of money.
And
it is, but it's for, most people, as my husband and I were talking about this the other day, most people, when you get to that level, it's late in your life and you've been sort of working up to that, saving, packing away in a 401k. You hand a kid, a $30,000 signing bonus and an $800,000 contract at 22, what are they doing with that money? A lot of them aren't investing it. They're not setting up a nest egg so that they do have money when it's all said and done. And so if you only play 1 or 2 years and you're not vested, you don't get any of these benefits. So then these players who are injured have to go back to the league and ask for that money, and they go before a panel. And 9 times out of 10, the panel says, no, you know what? No, we're not. Your injury, your hardship doesn't reach the level that it needs to reach. Now, Damar Hamlin's going to be fine. It's too high profile of a case. He'll probably be set for life. Thanks to the Buffalo Bills, and I think the Pagula family will make sure that he's taken care of. But I don't think, Jim, I mean, and maybe I'm just too negative about the NFL, but I don't know that it's going to trickle down to the 53rd guy on the roster who is a undrafted rookie free agent who blows out his ankle, and the doctor says, I don't know if we can ever prepare the ankle to repair it enough, or he's not a good enough player that another team is willing to take a risk on him. And so then you have nothing, and you're just sort of on your own to try and figure it out.
Well, this story of this Cameron Clark, who was an offensive lineman drafted by the Jets, and he got hurt, I guess, in his second training camp day with a spinal cord injury. And he asked forced to retire at 24. He asked the NFL for disability benefits, and they said no. I mean, and he's hurt playing football. That's at the NFL facility.
And he'll never play football again. And he's certainly not vested.
Well, quickly, because I want to get to this Harvard hockey thing you mentioned in passing, you make a really good point, though. Well, I have visited all my anger about all these things on the league, where most of the anger should be directed. The union here, which is probably the weakest union in professional sports, has the ability to say in a contract negotiation, we're not cutting a deal until these first and second year players who don't vest are vested, at least for health care or something, if they're injured.
They mentioned this in the story, and those players, I mean, think about what you were like as a 22 or 23-year-old kid. You don't think you're going to be hurt. You think you're invincible. So they say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'll be fine. I'm good enough. I'll make it. I'll get to the fully...
Until they don't.
It used to be 5 years to be fully vested. At least now it's down to 3 years to be fully vested. But a lot of these players vote, we see it all the time across our country. You vote against your own interests because you think, forget it. At least they've raised the base pay or they've done something else. And you don't think at 23. I certainly didn't think at 23. Like, boy, I should find something where I have good health insurance because what if something happens to me down the line?
We're talking to Attorney Casey from NBC Sports Boston. So you started talking about the Harvard hockey coach. Tell us more.
Is this Bob Holler who wrote this? We should credit him. What a brilliant piece of reporting.
He does great stuff.
He's amazing.
Over and over and over again. Great investigative sports work.
Yeah, he's an incredible journalist. And the title to this story is that the head hockey coach, Katie, can you remind me of her last? Katie Stone. Thank you. I almost said Katie Strange. Katie Stone. For hockey, a very accomplished, successful women's hockey coach is now being accused by more than a dozen players, former players, of varying levels of being verbally abusive, putting them in uncomfortable situations, whether it was hazing incidents, one time using derogatory language to tell the team that they weren't working hard enough. This is a quote from the story. She said, and she had 2 Native American women on her team, and she stands up in front of the team and she says, there's too many Chiefs and not enough Indians, and this woman alleges that she looked directly at her, so using derogatory language, asking players to, not go to a lab, not go to a class, that they should be putting hockey ahead of going to school and getting an education. And the biggest thing
come back from concussions before they recovered.
Come back from concussions before he recovered, pushing young women to come back from injury before they're ready to, so they could be successful. But the one thing I thought was very interesting in this is that she sort of also picked favorites. That, there are a number of women that Bob Holler talked to who said, Katie changed my life. She was instrumental, but many of those women were very successful hockey players. They were at the, probably highly recruited individuals, and she often treated those players differently than she would treat a lesser player on her roster.
This story was really disturbing to me because, as you said, there were 16 people who complained. And, of course, there were 20, 30 people who said she was great. I loved her. Harvard, after hearing the grievances, puts her back in her job. And the only analogy I can think of is, of course, there are always going to be people who speak well of the most abusive people. I'm sure that people say Harvey Weinstein was a great guy. Well, unfortunately, there were a lot of people who he raped or sexually abused in other fashion. Unless Harvard, which refused to speak to the Globe, by the way, which tells me everything, unless Harvard says these allegations are untrue, I don't care if 3,000 women say she's been great to them. If 16 of them can make the case, as they do pretty convincingly in this piece, they were abused either mentally,
emotionally,
whatever, then the answer is, what the hell is this woman doing coaching young women?
And that's why I brought up the anecdote of she treated well-regarded players differently than she treated role players.
Well, a couple of the 16 were stars, though.
Yes,
some of them were stars.
Some of them were, but fell out of her favor, right?
Yep,
and there was an anecdote in there where, and I forget the specifics of it, but one young woman, I think got like a public intoxication ticket or something, and so she was put on probation, and then she was taken off the team. But one of the star players got a drunk driving ticket, and it was like, and when other teammates came to her and said, like, this shouldn't have happened, she put people in danger, it was this bad situation, the coach was mad at the women who came forward because this was a star player and she didn't want her to be taken off the team. So there was this double standard oftentimes based on how valuable you were as a hockey player.
Decades, couple of decades.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last thing of you, too? Because I read the story early in the weekend. And by the way, it's still on the Globe website. You should check it out. Isn't there something in it in which Holler quotes a survey of Harvard athletes, whereof I think it's 42 interscholastic or whatever it's called, college sports? This was voted by the participants as being the least welcoming, least whatever the positive adjectives are. Can you check that out if you don't mind?
I also read this story over the weekend, so
in any case,
I skimmed it yesterday to refresh. But
my attitude is, if Harvard has a defense for doing what they're doing, they should have the decency to explain it to the world rather than refusing to comment. It's really appalling.
It's like, I don't understand. Like, and again, this is one of my issues with particularly college and youth sports, but also pro sports, is winning seems to make people gloss over anything. And if you are leading a successful program, whether it's a successful Olympic program, a high school program, a college team, and your teams are winning, then whether it's Larry Nassar or
who abused the gymnast.
Yes, who abused the gymnast, or something taking place like Ohio State football with the assistant coach. Like, all of it is overlooked, and people are asked to stay quiet because, well, we're winning games and we're doing what we're supposed to do, which again goes back to my earlier point about how these aren't student athletes, they're athlete students, and I think that needs to be reversed.
I want to get to the good news story about the National Women's Soccer League, but just saying passing, speaking of hockey, I want to do a shout out to Kevin Paul DuPont in the Globe. He did an obituary thing on Bobby Hull, who's arguably one of the 2 or 3 greatest pro hockey players ever, and instead of glossing over what he did off the ice, which was abuse women, he went right into it. And the notion that because you die and you were famous and did great things in a sport or acting means everything should be cleansed. Obviously, it should not. And he deserves credit for doing balance, saying what a great hockey player he was and saying what a horrible person he was.
And I'll be honest,
I
didn't know what type of person he was because, quite frankly, I wasn't even alive when he finished his playing career.
Well, I didn't know he was praising Nazis and abusing wives.
I didn't know any of that until I read the Kevin Paul DuPont article. And it reminded me when Zoe sent it to me and said, like, kind of the angle you wanted to go with it. It reminded me of when Kobe Bryant died.
Yeah.
And Kobe Bryant was a tremendous basketball player, and there were great things that he did, but he also was accused of raping a woman, and not enough people in their retrospectives on him talked about that. Doesn't need to always be the only thing, but it was part of his entire story.
Yeah, and this was pretty bad. One of the wives said he hit her on the head with a steel heel of her own shoe and held her over the balcony, and she thought, I'm going to die.
And you know what I kept thinking, too? Like, the era in which he played, I think part of why I never knew that story and you never knew all of those details is because women were so devalued. I mean, he played from 1957 until 1972, and to the best of my knowledge, women couldn't even get a credit card during a large part of that, right? Like, I think it was until the 70s that you needed, like, a husband in order to get, like, so I think, honestly, there were probably a lot of other people treating women and talking about minorities the same way he was, and it was just this accepted part of who he was, and probably an agreeable part for a lot of people.
We're running out of time. I want to mention the soccer league before we do this. From the Globe story, the Faculty of Arts and Science commissioned a study. It ranked women's hockey team at Harvard last among the university's 42 varsity sports in quality of student athletes' experiences. Tell us in a minute about the National Women's Soccer League.
Well, it's coming to Boston, and it's finally, there was this great story in Axios Sports yesterday about how the valuation of women's franchises are on a major upswing. So at NWSL, so National Women's Soccer League team, used to be valued around $2 to $3 million in order to get into the league. Now teams are going for 30, the one in Boston, $50 million. So people are buying in and believing in women's sports. And this speaks volumes about where women's sports are headed, the amount of money they think they can make on advertising. I don't know if you guys have noticed it all, but ESPN has been leading sports centers with women's sports stories, which has drawn the ire of angry men everywhere. Who cares about this stuff? Well, we care because they're good. They're doing great things, right? And I think it's really changing the tune. And I'm really excited that this league is going to be invested in here in Boston.
Trina Casey's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, BPR contributor. Thank you very much, Trina Casey. Up next, we've got the first of our Ask the doubleheader. Governor Maura Healey is here for her first Ask the Governor on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. Right after the news, we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Spirits, Sharon Sherpa with Robert Beer, featuring reflections on Buddhism and migration. Opens at the Peabody Essex Museum February 4th. PEM.org. See how missteps between Vladimir Putin and the last 5 American administrations led to the invasion of Ukraine. Don't miss Frontline, Putin and the Presidents, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
I'm senior digital producer Megan Smith, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, live from the Boston Public Library, 877-301-8970. That's the number to call or text to get through to Governor Maura Healey, here for her first Ask the Governor in just a couple of minutes. So much to talk to her about: affordable housing and rent control, teachers' strikes, the slow-moving tea, and more. You have a question? Call or text her.
I'm Marjorie Egan. After Governor Healey will check in on arts and theater around town with GBH's Jared Bowen. Then another Ask the Hour, this time with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, city planning overhauls, climate work, Legos, and housing. And we'll stay on the air for an extra half hour to fit in all of your questions. 877-301-8970. All that ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Facing a torrent of criticism for lying about key parts of his background, Republican Congressman George Santos is recusing himself from his House committee assignments temporarily. NPR's Windsor Johnston has more on the embattled House freshman.
Santos was assigned to sit on the House Small Business and Science, Space, and Technology committees earlier this month. During a closed-door meeting with fellow Republicans today, Santos said he would not serve on the committees for now. Santos is facing an ethics investigation for lying to voters about his past, including his professional experience. He's also under investigation by local and federal prosecutors in New York for potential irregularities involving financial disclosures amid loans he made to his campaign. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has said that he supports Santos, but he will be removed from office if the House Ethics Committee finds that he broke the law. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
The deadline's today for 7 states that rely on the Colorado River to either reach a new water sharing agreement to use less water or let the federal government do it for them. California's the only state that did not release a water-saving proposal late yesterday. Alex Hager of member station KUNC in northern Colorado reports the Colorado River feeds Lake Powell and Lake Mead, both of which are low after decades of drought.
They put out this proposal to conserve about 1.5 million acre-feet of water. That is enough to supply millions of homes each year. So right now, the Biden administration is working on tweaks to the amount of water released from those big reservoirs over the next couple of years. That's Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And they asked the states to send in a proposal to help guide those tweaks, one of which is accounting for evaporation.
Alex Hager reporting. The Federal Reserve Committee that sets interest rates is meeting this week. NPR's Scott Horsley reports members are likely paying close attention to a new report on wage growth.
The Labor Department says wages and benefits rose just 1% in the last 3 months of 2022. That's a slowdown from the previous quarter and the smallest increase in a year. The news should be reassuring to inflation watchdogs at the Federal Reserve, who begin a 2-day policy meeting today. While the job market is still strong and unemployment's at a half-century low, there's little sign of the kind of wage price spiral that fueled runaway inflation in the 1970s. The Fed is expected to boost interest rates again this week as part of its ongoing effort to curb inflation, but markets expect a rate hike of just 0.25 percentage point. That would be the smallest jump since last March. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The International Monetary Fund projects the global economy will grow by a greater than expected 2.9% this year. It also forecasts inflation will ease in 2023. The Fed and other central banks around the world have aggressively raised rates to counter spiraling prices. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. It's an historic day here in Massachusetts as it's now legal to wager on sports and other events at the state's 3 casinos. Esteban Bustillos was at Encore Boston Harbor as the first wagers took place.
Things were frenzy at Encore Boston Harbor as bets went live. 32 guests placed the first bets at kiosk before the casino sports books opened at 10:30. Where Boston sports legends like Cedric Maxwell and Johnny Damon were on hand. The newly legalized industry is expected to bring in millions in revenue for the state. At Encore Boston Harbor, I'm Esteban Bustillos, GBH News 89.7.
Meanwhile, Massachusetts House Speaker Ron Mariano was also at Encore Boston Harbor as the first bets were placed this morning. He tells GBH that he was very impressed by what he saw.
Now that people see us and all these celebrities betting in person, I think you'll see a huge increase in folks who come here and on a whim may walk up to the window and just place a bet.
Mariano says once mobile and online betting goes live here in the state, the results for the Commonwealth should be very impressive. Schools on Nantucket were closed early today because of a ransomware attack that crippled the district's computer system. Superintendent Beth Hallett sent an email to staff and parents explaining the situation and adding that students were being dismissed for safety and security reasons. The computer systems, the phone system, and security cameras were all shut down. That attack affected grades from pre-K right through 12th grade. No word on if there's school tomorrow. 35 degrees in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, thanking the people who make public radio great every day, and also those who listen.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com /GBH News, and we are joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hello, Jim.
Hello there. That's right. The governor will be with us till the top of the hour, taking our questions and yours. You can text her or call her at 877-301-8970. And there's a pretty nice crowd here at the library to see her. And if you want to ask her a question face-to-face at that mic right there, you go to Brendan. Brendan, raise your hand if you don't mind. You go to Brendan, and if your question is passable, there's a good chance you got to ask it of the governor. Governor, it's great to have you. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, and a great crowd.
It is a great
Happy
crowd.
New Year, everyone. Great to see you.
I think they came to see you, Governor. I don't like to say. I think it wasn't us. I think it was you. But in any case.
That's her opinion.
I don't know.
So, Governor, you've been governor for 3 weeks now, right?
Not even.
Not even. I'm just wondering if things have changed, if you get the best tables at the restaurant or if you go to the registry, everyone steps aside so you can get up and pay your parking tickets or whatever you're doing.
It's been great. I am so grateful to people around the state, first off, for electing me, but also for the reception. And we've been out on the road the last, it's not even 3 weeks, but everywhere from Ludlow to Wilmington to the Berkshires, North Adam, Pittsfield, Dartmouth. Thank you.
Thank
you. You're adjusting the microphone
Thank
here.
you.
Okay, I just say
we heard everything.
You heard everything.
We did.
Go ahead.
And I think people are really generally excited, optimistic, and also expectant. There's a lot of challenges out there, a lot of urgency. And we're just excited to have the opportunity, the privilege to work with people inside the administration, outside the administration, across this Commonwealth to move us forward. It's busy. I finally figured out, not only where the bathroom is, but some of the other offices in the State House. But obviously that's an adjustment, and it's a new team, and a new team we're building out. I'm really proud of our cabinet. I think we've got some really excellent people in as secretary, very, very exciting. And we're about the business now of sitting down and, assessing where things are within the various agencies and prioritizing what we need to do. And so I'm really thrilled about where we're at and the direction of things. It's It's certainly busy. But it should be busy given the nature of all we want to get done in the state.
The calls, the lines filled up quickly, so we'll just ask you on one topic, and then we'll get to the calls and the texts. We were joined yesterday by the president of the Mass Teachers Association. As you know, day 2 of a teacher strike in Woburn is today. There's a bill pending before the legislature which would legalize strikes by all public employees except public safety workers. Do you support it?
No, I'm not comfortable taking a position on that. I mean, I would say, and we talked to both the teachers union and the city yesterday. I was hoping that they would resolve this. I hope they will resolve this today because we really need to make sure that our kids are back in school. And, obviously I come from a family of educators. I support educators. We want to make sure that our educators are treated well and fairly. And we want to do the things that will incent more people into education, teachers, paraprofessionals, and the like. It's also really important, particularly with what we've seen kids experience through COVID. We've got to make sure that kids are in the classroom and everything. It's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that people really stay at the table, negotiate, get this done so that our young people can get back to school.
So just to be clear, you do not support a bill that would legalize the right to strike of most public safety workers?
At this time, I'm not taking a position on that.
No position. Rick in Cambridge, you are first on Boston Public Radio with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hi.
Hi, Governor Healey. I know you have a deep interest in the physical, emotional, and social well-being of our youth. And there's one thing that you can do that actually would be very easy to do that would significantly not only make our youth, our students, emotionally, socially, and physically healthier, but it would also prevent problems from coming. And that is to use your authority to get the Board of Education to release the draft of the new revised health education frameworks, which they have been sitting on for 4 years. And I know this because I was part of the group 4 years ago that made the revision. And we are now using a 24-year-old health education framework that is completely out of date. And teachers and principals and superintendents and curriculum coordinators don't have the resources that they need to facilitate.
Rick, we got it. I think let's hear what the governor has to say.
Well, first of all, Rick, thanks for calling in. And I know that my team's making a note of your comment right now. There are a lot of things you learn as you start a job like this. There are a lot of things that have been in the works or are in the works, and these are the very things that we're looking to uncover now and see what we can do about it. Certainly, Rick, I share your concern for kids' social, emotional well-being. Growing up, my mom was a school nurse and a health teacher, and I think what she was teaching and confronting at that time is very different from where we've evolved to today and what the needs of our students are. So we take that very seriously. I promise Secretary Tutwiler, who this Commonwealth will come to know and love as our new Secretary of Education, takes that very seriously as well, and thank you for flagging it.
Rick, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
I believe we have a question from the audience on police reform.
Hello, Governor. My name is Mike. I'd like to know why, since union contracts require agreement on both sides, why not at the next bargaining session insist that police union contracts provide that arbitrators do not have the power to reinstate officers fired for misconduct, such as for killing Tyree?
Thanks, Mike, for your question. I'd have to look into what the specifics are about the rules or the policies that you're referring to there. I will say, Mike, as I've said for a long time now, it is absolutely critical that we have the assurance of people. The people have the assurance, and those who are there to protect and serve. We've done a lot of work in this state on this. A lot has been implemented, and as governor, I will continue to support the police reform efforts that have been underway, as well as the criminal justice reforms that have been underway. And with respect to Tyree Nichols, I think all of us are horrified by what happened. It was a betrayal of basic humanity. I was pleased to see how quickly law enforcement and the chief acted there and the prosecutor acted there. But I think it points to a greater issue of systemic racial profiling that exists in society. Certainly we've seen it in policing, but we can't deny that we see it across so many realms of society. And day in and day out, I think here in the Commonwealth, we need to commit to any and all efforts to address those systemic failings that have held people back for far too long. We need to do that for the sake of people across this country.
Mike, thank you for your question.
You know, Mike is absolutely correct, though, that a lot of these issues go to arbitration. We talked with Bill Evans, or even before that, Commissioner Davis, about police officers in Boston who had been fired for misconduct or stealing money or too much violence or something, and they're reinstated through arbitration. Mayor Wu now is facing a situation where the Boston Police Patrolman wants to go into arbitration for their points. The arbitrators often favor the police officer in these situations. Meanwhile, we got the Worcesters under a Department of Justice. They're looking at what goes on up in Worcester with policing. And Springfield has that narcotic squad violence consent decree that is being looked at up there. And then, of course, in Cambridge, we found out, I didn't even know this, that Cambridge has lagged way behind. There's no police body cameras in Cambridge. And there was a young man, a student at UMass Boston, who seemed to be having a mental health issue and was shot by the cop. We still don't know who the police officer was that was involved with that, and the community is very upset. So we have a lot of problems right here with police transparency.
Well, I think you noted some of the things that are happening across cities around this state, and you know the challenges that cities are sometimes confronting when it comes to these issues. On a state level, you know, I just remind folks that an important piece of legislation that was passed, the Police Reform Act of a few years ago, established a statewide commission that is about ensuring the proper licensing and decertification of police officers. And so that's an important body that we have in place. We caught up with some other states in establishing that. And as governor, I'll do everything I can to support the efforts of the newly created Post Commission.
Let's go to Karen in West Roxbury. You're on Boston Public Radio with the new governor of the Commonwealth. Hi, Karen.
Yes, good morning, Governor. Congratulations on your historic win.
Thanks, Karen.
I'm calling also with regard to criminal justice reform with two questions. One, I'm wondering if you're willing to commit to banning use of facial recognition software as part of and in support of piece of the police reform bill. And the other is I'm wondering if you will commit to not building a new women's prison and instead commit to creative, innovative decarceration policies.
Well, Karen, thanks for your question. I feel like I'm back in my old hat as Attorney General, which I am not, and I'm very excited to work with our new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. My position on facial recognition remains the same. I think there is a place for it. I think that the guardrails around how facial recognition is deployed are important as well. But that has been my position on facial recognition. When it comes to the moratorium, it's a really important topic. I have tremendous empathy there. I would say this. I think that we need to be careful about not taking steps that would actually prevent us from rehabilitating and fixing existing conditions, whether it's at Framingham or elsewhere. I want to see people having access to the kinds of programming that is important to them and to their future, educational, rehabilitative, and the like. You've got so many people who are dealing with real issues of trauma, of mental health, of substance use disorder, and these things need to be provided. Also, somebody is entitled, while in state care and custody, to be kept in conditions that are habitable and safe and healthy. And so I would not want to take a position that would preclude the state from putting money into the immediate fixing up, so to speak, of existing physical plant. I certainly support the call for no more new construction with respect to sort of new buildings, new infrastructure. But that's the caveat I offer there, Karen.
Karen, thank you for the call. By the way, the new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will make her first visit for Ask the Attorney General on February 14th. Am I correct? February 14th.
Valentine's Day.
And the mayor will be with us
Not
at 1:30.
a better way to spend Valentine's Day than with you, Jim.
You know, speaking of... You and nobody else feels that way. Thank you. It's a beautiful spirit. Governor, we have asked you about rent control about 3,000 times when you were Attorney General and a candidate. When we asked you the question in May, you said, I'm not sure it's the solution. Then when Mayor Wu finally put together a proposal about a week or two ago, you're not quoted in the Globe, but it says the governor is, quote, non-committal. We went back to what you said to us when I asked you a question in, I think it was August, asking you about how do you feel about local option rent control bills, which is exactly what Mayor Wu is filing. Here's what you said. Yeah, I support lifting the state ban on that. Absolutely. That's been my position, and you leave it to communities to sort it out and what's going to work in those communities. That sounds to me like you were in favor of local option rent control bills like the one, at least in spirit, being filed by the mayor. Is that correct?
I don't think my position has changed on this. I think from the beginning, my view has been, first of all, we've got a housing crisis. People can't afford rent. They can't afford to buy new homes. And this gets to whether or not people are going to be able to come here, stay here, or whether people are going to up and leave from here. So housing is a top priority. It's why I've created a Secretary of Housing. It's why we are big time focused on increasing housing production around the state. What I've also said is that I support the efforts of local communities to make decisions for themselves about what is going to work within their community. And so with every proposal, of course, the devil's always in the details. And this was just filed. I haven't seen it yet, but obviously my team will take a look at it as it first has to work its way through the city council. So my position remains that I support the efforts of local communities to make those decisions around housing, around rent stabilization in particular.
So you do support, again, the devil is in the details, but the concept is one that obviously you're comfortable with and support.
The concept is, yes, and also we need to make sure we look through the details, how those things work out, what the implications are, right? All of that.
You know, there are other parts of what Mayor
But
wants.
I also want to underscore the imperative of creating more housing around the state. And sometimes that's going to mean building new housing. Sometimes it's going to mean putting money into the rehabilitation of existing properties, the preservation of existing properties, dilapidated properties that we could fix up. I've also asked, day one, I think, on this job, I asked my Secretary of Administration and Finance to give me an inventory of all unused state property to see if we can convert some of that to housing. Because right now, people in this state, frankly, across regions and across an economic spectrum, are struggling with the high cost of housing. And this will go towards the competitiveness now and our future, this state. It's why we've made it such a priority.
You know, your predecessor, Charlie Baker, pushed for this 175 communities that have MBTA stations and trains and whatever going through their community, build affordable housing around those stations. Today's a deadline for them to come up with some plan. I think unless we've heard, they've missed the deadline to come up with a plan. And that's a big deal in terms of affordable housing. People get right on the tee. So do they pay a penalty for missing the deadline, or do we give them another extension, or what?
Well, let's talk about that. First of all, that's a good plan. It's not the only plan out there, but I think the idea that you would incent more development, denser development around transit hubs makes a lot of sense. And when we say affordable, it's affordable across a range of income levels, okay? So I just want to, sometimes we use those words, but I want to be really clear with the public. I am not speaking exclusively of low-income housing. I am talking about housing for the middle class. And as well. That's just really, really an important point right now. And that is one important thing that the Baker administration did. I think it was an excellent idea. We need to support that. I'll get details when I get back to the office today about who's filed what. We have seen a number of communities actually file their zoning plans, which they needed to under the law. But certainly this administration is going to look to do everything it can to incent, support, and drive up compliance with that particular program. But we need to do more. And that's why I talk about Secretary of Housing, whose responsibility it will be to drive housing production across the state. Rehabilitation, preservation, use of state-owned properties that are just sitting empty right now, identifying how we can work with developers, with communities to grow housing starts around the state. We must do it. We have to do it. The Lieutenant Governor is very, very focused on this and will continue to be, but housing, because, people need to be able to afford to live here. And right now, there are way too many people who are struggling with that. And I do not want to see people leave our great state. We live in the greatest state in the country, but it's not great if you can't afford to live here. And that's something that we have to have a real conversation about, an honest conversation about, and it will require collaboration, state, federal, local level. I'm pleased that last week the Lieutenant Governor and I filed a nearly $1 billion bond bill, $987 million, important for housing, for economic development, for the kind of investments that we want to see happen across the state in infrastructure.
One last thing about this. One of the things that Mayor Wu has proposed to the legislature is that there's a tax on high-value real estate transfers as part of her package up to the legislature. Do you think that's a good idea?
I want to see more about that.
Okay.
I want to see more about that. Again, we are at a crisis point. I've talked about the housing crisis in this state, and I think that we need to be open to any and all solutions that will get us to the point where more people are able to afford to live here, to stay here, to grow families here, to grow businesses here, right? There's so much the state has going for it, but we're being held back by a few things: housing, transportation, cost of childcare. These are things we need to deal with.
Let's go to Jasper. You're in Marlboro. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hello. Hey, Mara Healy. I have a question for you.
Hi, Jasper.
So I wanted to ask in regards to trans health care. What's your plan on helping people being able to access it much easier? And I'm just trying to find the phrasing for it because, for example, I've had to travel to Boston for some of my health care. How are we going to facilitate it for all Massachusetts citizens?
Well, I appreciate your question, Jasper. As folks may know, I've been a longtime civil rights advocate. I've been very supportive of ensuring that members of the LGBTQ community have access to services equal to anyone else in this state, and that includes when it comes to access to needed health care, particularly for our transgender community. And so, it's about education. It's about incenting the providers, as you say, you suggest not everyone can get to Boston for care. So how do we make sure that care is getting spread out to communities around the state? It's something that I know my Secretary of Health and Human Services will look at as equity. Equity we read with a very broad lens. Equity across all realms is really important, and know that I will continue to be a champion when it comes to supporting the rights of the LGBTQ community.
Okay, so Carrie asked a question I think you should answer rather than Marjorie or me. Did all three of you coordinate your outfits today? You were all wearing a plum color. I think you should tell the truth, Governor. We did coordinate our outfits this morning. Is that not correct?
We are so karmically psychically synced, Jim and Marjorie. It just happens.
Exactly.
I said to Marjorie, it's what's in the closet for me.
It's what's in the closet. It's
what's clean and in the closet.
Absolutely. And you don't have to iron. Yeah.
Can we have a light moment here? Well, I don't know. Like you were, there's a contest. Is that the right word?
Oh, yes.
About you and the Lieutenant Governor, I guess, and this is a tradition. Well, explain this portrait thing and the extension of what you're doing with kids here. You explain it.
That's not a light moment.
So what is a light moment,
Your sneakers are a light moment.
Thank you
For
very
those
much.
on it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Thank you.
Can you believe he wears those sneakers in public? I mean, really.
I'll show them to you in a few minutes.
They're like a Jackson Pollock meets
They are.
something. I don't
Thank
know.
you.
It's a
Appreciate
Nike running shoe that Jim's
Thank you.
sporting.
Yeah, it's a sad situation.
It doesn't match, by the way, anything that we're wearing.
Or anything that he's
Even though
wearing
it has
is what she
50
wanted to
different
say.
colors in it.
How about those portraits?
Yeah, well, that's not light. It's very serious.
Okay, good.
Okay, serious moment for civic engagement, particularly for engaging with young people around this state. By tradition, the governor and the lieutenant governor, with the start of any new administration, select a portrait of a former governor or lieutenant governor to hang in their offices. And so we showed up, we gave it some thought, and then we just decided that it would be, we got a lot of decisions to make right now. We thought this decision would be really terrific for young people around the state to weigh in on. So we decided to hold a contest. It's open for another week or two, inviting young people from around the state to submit an essay recommending why a particular portrait should hang. So, part of what we want to do is we want to bring young people into government. We want to bring young people into the State House. We want them to visit us. We want them to be engaged in government. And this was a way for them to learn a little bit about the history of Massachusetts and those who've served, and also put their stamp on whose portrait should hang so that they can have some investment in that process.
Where do they
and in that
submit
State
that? How do
House.
they do this? Where do they do this? Do you know?
You think I know?
I
don't
didn't
know.
think so,
Where
actually. We'll
somewhere.
ask your coworker in a minute. Do you,
Yeah.
you know the answer?
We'll make sure we get that.
Mass.gov, is that what you said? Well, you'll tell us in a minute.
Okay.
Hey,
Mass.gov
before you leave, what happened?
Governor.
Governor.
Yeah.
What happens when they pick a governor for your office who you didn't like? I'm serious about that. What do you do?
I've said for a long time I don't engage in hypotheticals.
Okay, fine. We're talking to Maura Healey. She is the new governor of the Commonwealth. Mike in Burlington, you're next on Boston Public Radio with Maura Healey. Hi.
How you doing?
Great.
Hey, Mike.
I just have a quick question. Is you going to do anything to help the senior citizens with their home taxes? Maybe cap them?
Yeah, Mike, this is something I'm really sensitive to, as you may not know. During the campaign, I supported lowering taxes for seniors, addressing the circuit breaker. I also supported tax relief for progressive tax relief for a variety of folks when it came to renters, to lower income individuals. I also supported, for what it's worth, raising the limit for the estate tax from $1 to $2 million. So, I have been a strong proponent of tax relief for people around the state. I continue to be. Mike, when it comes to our seniors, seniors are a group that's hit really hard right now. It is really, really tough, I know, to afford groceries, to afford gas, to afford a mortgage, to afford insurance, to afford rent, to afford electricity and heating, though we talked to the utilities recently, and they have told us that people should start to see their rates go down, their bills go down for heat and electricity starting February 1st. But, Mike, that continues to be my position. We've got to do everything we can to support our seniors.
Staying on, Mike, thank you for your call. Staying on taxes for a minute. You said, I think during the campaign, that Governor Baker's tax package was something like really sensible. Those were some of the elements you mentioned a minute ago. When you gave your first speech in front of a business group, I think it was Associated Industries the other day, you said you hadn't settled on the details yet. Are those things that you just mentioned baked into whatever your proposal is? And when are we going to see this tax cut proposal you talked a lot about?
I think those are all good ideas. I think those are all good elements. I think there are other elements to consider. I'm not ready to announce yet what our position is going to be with respect to tax relief. That's something that is the subject of ongoing discussion right now. Important this week, we were able to get a number for what's called the consensus revenue, just identifying how much money we expect to have to be able to have budgeted. And, I'm really pleased that we were able to do that working with the Senate, working with the House and our office, we were collectively able to decide on that important consensus revenue figure. So that's a good start, a good starting place. But we have more work to do in discussion over the next few days, next few weeks, really, when it comes to thinking about what a tax relief package might look like.
Will that be in the
proposal.
budget, your submission? When does that, I don't know, when does that happen?
Well, the budget gets submitted March 1st, and so, we're leaving that open as to whether it will be in the budget or whether it will appear elsewhere. Again, this is a subject of ongoing discussion with legislative leadership, recognizing, I think we all recognize that families are hurting and affordability is a key issue for our state.
But it is very likely, the estate tax change that you talked about, some relief for renters, it is very likely that a package will include something on those fronts. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I can tell you what I've been interested in and focused on. I can also tell you that so much of this originates with the House, so it is a collective process, and that's why our discussions between and among legislative leadership is so important, remains so important. We're engaged in that, and I think nothing should be off the table when it comes to collectively making decisions that are in the best interest of folks around the state.
You're listening to Governor Maura Healey. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we have at the Boston Public Library Mike, our homie Mike here. Paul has a question for the governor.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Marjorie.
Hey, Paul.
And Governor, may I have your permission to call you Governor Maura?
Sure.
What is she going to say? No?
I like that. I get called a lot of things, I'm sure, so that sounds very nice.
Wait, just give it time. Okay.
You inherited a housing problem along with an affordability problem. And so many people are saying we need more housing. But what I'm trying to say is we don't need more housing. We need more housing that's green and truly sustainable. And I'm going on the I'm going on the description of sustainability as being our ability to meet our current needs without compromising the needs of future generations. So as a scientist, I'm really...
Hey, Paul, I want to be respectful. We need a question. There are a lot of people who want to talk.
Would you like to comment on green housing as opposed to any old housing? And thank you, Jim. And thank you, Governor.
Sure.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Paul, for raising the question. I am really committed to this area. You know, it's why I... first up, these aren't mutually exclusive. We can do both. We can build more housing, and we can build more sustainable housing, and we can use our housing production to help, us get where we need to be in terms of our climate goals. I'm the first governor in the country to appoint a cabinet-level climate chief. I did that because it's so important, because you need somebody who's going to sit atop and work with all of our agencies, our housing agency, our economic development agency, our transportation agency, our education agency, to make sure that those agencies are operating with a lens around climate and doing everything that they can to address issues of sustainability, resilience, and the like. When it comes to building, the new starts for housing, it's really exciting because you can think about ways to build them in a way that are green, that will actually be much better for our environment, that will reduce unhealthy pollution, and will also save people money, right? And you know far more about this, Paul, as a scientist that you are. But I firmly stand in the camp that these things are not mutually exclusive prerogatives, and we can and must achieve both. And that's why I have set up the administration the way I've set it up, so that we're having that direct engagement and conversation and that lens across all of our agencies. And it's also, why I'm going to make sure that we as a state are chasing and maximizing every single federal dollar that can come our way for investments that are going to help us when it comes to climate and infrastructure and transportation and the like. That's the attitude. That's where we need to be here in Massachusetts.
We're talking to Governor Maura Healey. She's with us till the top of the hour. We're broadcasting from the Boston Public Library. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is going to be here taking our questions and yours from 1:30 to 2. You are listening to
2:30.
2:30, excuse me.
Yep.
1:30 to 2:30, extra half hour today. Very exciting. Anyway, we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com.
GBH's All Things Considered with Arun Roth.
Community activists at the local level. They're always the best people to talk to.
A wrap-up of all the day's news with interviews and stories on what's happening around Boston.
And once we start talking to them, they tell us other people to talk to. It is eternally rewarding as a journalist to try to find people at the most local level, because that's where we get our best voices and the best news for our community.
On GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And National Grid, providing access to electric heat pumps which offer heating and cooling for businesses of all sizes to help them achieve their sustainability goals. You can learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library with Governor Maura Healey for the first of monthly Ask the Governors. We are thrilled she's here. She'll be with us till a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock. You can stream this and see her at youtube.com/GBH News. You can call or text her at 877-301-8970. Or if you're here, you can go see Brendan or Annie or one of our coworkers over there and do a question kind of thing. By the way, the portrait essay thing for kids, what's the age limit on this, Dale? You don't know that either?
No, I do know. It's
What
up
is it?
through high school.
Oh, okay. You're a little nervous
Through
there for a
12th grade.
second. Mass.gov/GOV portrait essay. That's the place to submit your thing till February 10th. That I'm right about. Yes? Till
Unless we have to move it. We'd like to get a portrait hung sooner rather than later.
Fair enough.
So Governor Healy, lots of people are texting about the MBTA. You know, I mean, every day there's another story. We had people having to walk through the dark tunnel on the Green Line by Copley. We learned that the MBTA is still waiting on more than 300 new red and orange line trains. This is just all this month. Green Line derailed a couple of days ago. The MBTA is not making the progress in hiring bus operators. Goes on and on and on. So where are we in trying to, or where are you, I should say, in dealing with and the other thing is, they've been criticized for the lack of transparency. Just the other day, they did not give a straight answer to Shirley Young from the Globe when she asked about homeless people sleeping in South Station. They said they weren't being thrown out of South Station, and in fact, Shirley went down there and they were. So the secrecy and dysfunction continues.
You know, when I ran for this job, and as I take this job, I know that transportation is at the top of mind for so many people, as it should be. And I know we've got a real challenge on our hands. And I am always going to be honest and direct and transparent with the public about the state of play. And we have a lot of work to do. I'm meeting with my secretary later today, my new Secretary of Transportation. And, you know, I think a few things. One, we have prioritized, this started weeks ago, we've prioritized the hiring of the absolute best general manager for the T that we can find. We're trying to move through that process as expeditiously, but as thoroughly as possible. Number two, we're prioritizing the hiring of a transportation safety chief. We've never had that before. And we are going to have that here so that we can have assurance that every rail and track and bus is inspected. The public deserves to know that they are using a system that is safe and reliable. And by the way, we're not going to incent people out of their cars, which is something as a climate governor I want to do, until and unless we have a system that is safe and reliable. Number three, we're getting to the bottom of those issues that you identified. When it comes to Springfield, it turns out there's this company in China that had a contract to build fabricate trains out in Springfield. It turns out that there are real delays in terms of what's happening out there, part of it due to some manufacturing and technical issues with the capabilities of the plant. We're now going to assemble a team to figure that out and to work to make that right as quickly as possible, because we need to have those red and orange line trains delivered as a matter of public safety. When it comes to transparency generally, look, I am a huge proponent of making sure that we are upfront and honest with the public about what is happening. And I'm going to be honest with you. You know, right now we've got a few things going on that are troubling. We've got a workforce issue. There are a lot of good people, great people at the MBTA working incredibly hard. There aren't enough of them. We're down 900 slots right now at the MBTA. We need to fill those slots as a matter of safety and as a matter of operation. So we're prioritizing the operation function. And, you know, as I say, I may not always make decisions or judgments that people will agree with. That's not something I can, that's something I can promise. I understand that. But I am going to endeavor, and this team will endeavor, to make decisions with the best information and with transparency to the public. I read that article the other day, and I picked up the phone. I called Jim O'Connell, and I asked Jim O'Connell what he thought about that. I also found out that it turns out the T owns that building, is responsible for the building, the South Station. They retain a private security company, and we've gone back now and we've talked to the private security company, and you saw the garbage bags are off. They're not locking the doors that way. And I'm going to be clear that if we face extreme weather, we're going to allow people to stay there overnight. it's a matter of basic humanity, in my view.
Hey, Jim O'Connell, Healthcare for the Homeless, the subject of a new Tracy Kidder book.
They're going to both be here.
Both
I don't know what
here.
the date
Yep.
is, but Tracy Kidder and Jim O'Connell. The 15th. Two quick transportation things, and we'll get back to the calls. One of the other things on the mayor's agenda before the legislature is a seat for Boston on the board of the T. Do you support that?
I do.
You do. And one other question. We discussed with your predecessor about 100 times congestion pricing, and with all due respect to Governor Baker, I had no idea at all why he was not willing to do a pilot, and I said it to him, so I'm not talking behind his back. Do you support at least something on the congestion pricing front in terms of roads and what time people drive and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I support a real look at this, whether it's a pilot or something else. I know that Jim Rooney at the Chamber of Commerce just recently raised that, and I've had a lot of discussions with him about it. But, again, if we want to get people out of cars and we want people to come back into the city, they need to have a reason to do that. And they need to have, a transportation system, a transit system that works.
Fair enough. Let's go to Cindy in Merrimack. You're on with the governor of the Commonwealth. More, you want to read whatever that is?
Well,
before?
just
Cindy, can you hold 1 second,
We
please?
just got a text from someone, Governor, that wants to know how the hell you spin that ball on your finger, the basketball. Can you do it for minutes at a time?
Yeah, I don't know. I was bored. I was a little kid. I started as a little kid, and it just gave me something to focus on.
Okay.
By the way,
Cindy from
I never knew it would be of interest later in life.
Cindy
John
Merrimack.
Abbott, by the way, our former boss, Susan Goldberg is here somewhere, our current boss. John Abbott just emailed to ask what the text number was. How pathetic is that? 877. Used to be the head of GBH till 3 weeks ago.
I feel John's pain. See, you asking me these questions? What's my...
That's right.
Yeah.
877-301-8970, John Abbott. Let's go to Cindy in Merrimack. Hey.
Hi. Good afternoon, Governor Healy.
Hi, Cindy.
I'm concerned thank you. I'm concerned about the condition of the Department of Developmental Services, their provider network, and I see two main challenges. The one being that salaries have never really supported the hiring and retention of staff, and we need staff who have, a skill set, to manage, to work with people who have behavioral and or medical issues. I'm not sure the general public kind of understands the skill level required. The other concern I have is that where these services have been so chronically underfunded that, and it's been certainly exacerbated by COVID and the general labor shortage, that the expectation of quality have devolved. And I'm concerned about this becoming normalized within that culture. It's understandable, but I'm hoping that salaries can, for beginners, increase, and I know that there's a bill in front of the legislature now to support an increase in salaries to bring it up to about $20 an hour level, which, brings it up from about, under 17, which would be a start. And so I guess my question is, would you support that? And do you have other thoughts about how we can pull this system out of crisis? Thanks.
Well, thank you for the question, Cindy. And this is a really, really important issue. We don't have the workforce that we need to support human services work across the state. And this is profoundly important work. Work with individuals who are some of the most vulnerable among us. And for the workforce, that creates extra challenges. And we need to figure out a way that we can get more people into the workforce. Right now, we see that, during COVID, there's certain day programs that still haven't reopened because they don't have workforce. And I hear story after story from people who are workers in places and also from family members who are just heartbroken and devastated that their loved ones aren't getting the services that they need. So I think, Cindy, you really put your finger on something that is a really important issue. It's something that our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kate Walsh, is going to be looking at. With respect to pay, we can't expect people to do these jobs where there are additional challenges if they're not going to be compensated. And so, we have a consensus number. I've got to talk to the budget team about what's possible. but it is about what you value in society. That's what budgeting is. It's not just numbers. There are people behind all these numbers, and I know that we have an acute crisis when it comes to human services and the workforce, and we've got to figure out a way as a state to address that, because I don't want people leaving, and I know they're leaving to go work at Amazon and Target and elsewhere. Leave work that is both a vocation and an avocation. They love this work. They want to stay with their clients, but they also have to be able to buy groceries, and pay rent. And so we've got to figure that out as a state.
Cindy, thank you very much for your call. We really appreciate it. Where do you want to go, Marjorie? Do you want to go back to the... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We got Ryan from Woburn.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Ryan.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Governor, thank you.
Hi, Ryan.
I just wanted to ask you... Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask you what can be done and what you might be able to do to help educators, teachers, professionals, paraprofessionals, and others to not only have a living but a respectable wage in Massachusetts. Right now, the Woburn teachers are on strike. I was kind of shocked to learn that that's illegal in Massachusetts. I don't know how that can be, but it is. And I wondered, what could be done at the state and local levels to remove impediments in negotiations and really, get behind and support these teachers. My father was a math teacher. My mother worked with special needs children in the schools, and I know what goodness there is in these people. And it's the discrepancy in what they should get paid and what they do get paid should weigh on the conscience of our society like a ton of bricks.
Ryan, thank you for the call.
Thanks, Ryan. And, this goes back to an earlier part of our conversation. I thought you were calling from Woburn to tell me that the strike had been resolved, because that has been my fervent hope. I want to see kids back in school. I want to support our kids. I want to support our families. I want to support our educators. And, these are challenging times. So let's work through this. When it comes to educators, I think that obviously pay, benefits, that's really important. I think that number two is also recognizing the mental health issues when it comes to not only students and our young people, but also educators. Number three, what are we doing when it comes to additional, personnel within the workforce, teachers as well as other educators, our paraprofessionals who have a starting salary of $22,000 a year. It's pretty hard to make a go of it at $22,000 a year. I get it. So, the good news is we have money now that will be coming in to the state, and hopefully we can be using that. We're going to be using that exclusively by just the fair share amendment. We're going to be using that revenue exclusively for education and transportation. With respect to education, hopefully there are investments that we can make in schools to support the work that educators are doing. But I'm mindful of people leaving, of people seeking other careers, of people retiring earlier. We need to keep educators in place. We also need to diversify our workforce around the state. So, Ryan, my mom was a school nurse and a teacher. My stepdad was a teacher, and I really appreciate the important role they have to play in the health and well-being and direction of the lives of our kids around the state. And with respect to what's happening in Woburn, I just really hope that people stay at the table and can figure out a way to get this one done.
Ryan, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Governor Healy, we talked a lot about transparency when you were the Attorney General. We talked about that a lot during your campaign. All the other previous governors of Massachusetts, Paul Cellucci, Mitt Romney, Charlie Baker, on Election Day, we knew all about them. We knew where they lived. We knew their families. We even had those sit-downs with at home with Governor so-and-so. That was different with you. We didn't find out till after the election about your life or about even where you lived. A lot of people thought it was Boston, turns out it was Cambridge. Was there a double standard? And if there was, why do you think that was?
No, I think a lot of people knew about my life, where I came from, where I grew up, my family, my brothers and sisters, my parents. They've been on the show actually in the past, and so I was happy to share more about my personal life, and I'm proud of it, and I'm grateful to all in my life, family and friends who support me in this work, and I'm sure have more conversations
going forward. Was it our fault in the media that we didn't ask? We didn't get the sit down at home with Maura Healey. Was that our making a mistake, or was that it just happened that way?
I don't know. I'm not aware earlier requests. I've certainly tried to meet with media throughout my time as Attorney General as often as possible. But I look forward to more discussions and, more interviews as people come to know me. I think, moving into this role, it's a little different. It's a little different being the Attorney General, where, with ramifications, legal ramifications for lives and well-beings when one speaks as Attorney General, there's a particular approach, and I think people are expecting to hear from you in that capacity as an Attorney General. When you're governor, it's obviously a different role, and you're going to be speaking about a lot more things. There are obviously big ramifications to your words, but it's a different kind of role, I think, that people see. And so I hope to have a lot of opportunities for more people. As many people who might have known me as Attorney General, I learned running for this seat. There are a whole bunch of people around this great state of 7 million people who don't know all that much about me, and I look forward to sharing more about me and how I think, who I am, how I approach things as we go forward.
Speaking of transparency, you and I, when you were here in December, I asked you the following. I said, will you confirm that you will not claim exemption from public record laws as governor? And you said, one-word answer, yes. By the way, for context, we're the only state in America where the legislature, judiciary, and the governor's office all claim exemptions. You said yes without any qualification. On your website, you say that you affirm what your predecessors as governor said, that there's a Lambert decision from the state's highest court saying the governor's office is exempt. However, you go on to write, or your office goes on to write, will respond to public record requests on a case-by-case basis. Governor Healy intends to follow the public records law and provide more transparency to the governor's office than ever before. Requests will be evaluated on a public records law and any unique obligations of the governor's office. How is that different from your predecessors? They also believe the law exempted them. You seem to be saying to me and to others, you think there shouldn't be exemptions except, I guess, prior policy decisions and personnel things. How is that statement on your website different from Baker and all before?
I think what's different, or what you'll see is different, is that when it comes to the actual implementation, you'll see some differences. I mean, as Attorney General, I was accustomed to complying with the public records law, and I said that I would continue that as governor, even though legally I'm not required to, and until and unless there's a legislative change. And so that's why, it's matter by matter, request by request, because there may be certain instances as a matter of security or personnel issues. You mentioned a deliberative, policy making. Mm-hmm. There may be certain instances where there are certain things that cannot be provided to the public, but I have assured and will continue to assure that I will be a governor who is going to be the most transparent that we've seen when it comes to the production of information. It's why, Marjorie, with respect to you asking questions about the T, I'm not going to hide the ball on things, because for better or worse, the public needs to know. So that was that's where my position remains the same.
So your default position is to release information, and the exception, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I want to make, the exception would be to claim exemptions in fewer cases. So you said,
that's right.
I think you said to the Globe the other day, you weren't going to file legislation that would remove the exemption of the legislature. If they do it, you'd support it. Would you file legislation to exempt your office from?
I don't think I need to file legislation. I think that I can just implement as along the lines that I've articulated, and that's what I'm going to do.
Let's go to Aria in East Bridgewater. You're on with Maura Healey. She's the new governor of the Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. Hi, Aria.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I also have a question related to the education system. I have a friend. She works a very busy full-time job as an educator in a high school. She has 3 young children. And I know, Governor, that you're very concerned about child care services and implementing them. I'm wondering if there are any, policies that are already instated or plans to provide financial restitution of any sort for educators for child care purposes.
Well, Aria, thanks for your question. Did you say you're in East Bridgewater?
I am, yeah.
Were you affected by that burn break the other day, the dam, the flooding?
I heard about it, but it didn't affect me personally, my son, the school he was in, was not impacted.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
The question you raised, it's really important. Just today, people may have seen that Middlesex, Norfolk County here in Massachusetts, we have among the highest, top 20 maybe, child care rates in the country. I think all of our counties are inside the top 100 in the country. Child care, disproportionately higher child care costs here in the state. So obviously we need to do something. And we need to look at that. I've actually tasked my Secretary of Education to look at that and to evaluate and come to me with a proposal about what we can do around reducing the cost of child care. I know it's been the subject of much discussion within the legislature, and collectively we've got to continue those conversations and work to provide relief to people out there who are dealing with really high costs of child care. We also need, and part of that is we need more child care workers. Through COVID, we saw the closure of so many child care centers. We've seen more people leaving the field for other positions, including those, as I mentioned earlier, at Amazon and Target and like. We need to figure out a way to bring and to grow a workforce of child care workers. And also we need some money and support for modernization of some of our child care centers as well.
Let's go to the mic in the studio. Janet, you've been very patient, and you're there with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hi.
Hi. We know that you're very concerned about the environment, and I came here with a group of people, and we also represent over 4,000 other people who've signed a petition of concern about a devastating environmental destruction that's going to occur very soon on the North Shore that affects 12 different communities. It's going to be the Northeast Metro Tech new vocational school. There was a late in the game change of decision about the location of the school, and now they want to put it on a forested hilltop that will involve blasting the hill, destroying 13 acres of old-growth trees. There are endangered species there, and Native American artifacts have just been found. And we just like to find out if there's any way your office could investigate why this change was made, and if there could be a stay, because there's a perfectly viable alternative that was presented years ago in a study they did on the football field that has the same size and could accommodate the same number of students. There's also a lot of safety issues, disability issues with the new design because it's going to be on a cliff. And it's going to happen really soon that as early as March, they could destroy the trees. And we would just like somebody to look into it because there are many other issues connected to it that are really bad. And we would just like someone to talk to who could maybe do something about it. We've been trying to reach... I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Let's just hear what the governor has to say about this, Janet. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Janet, for raising the issue, and for those who joined you today in coming here. I'll make sure that as we leave, we get a contact for you and your contact so that my team can reach out. I don't know specifically about that project or that site, so I need to learn more. I will say that, when it comes to siting generally, I have said that I believe we need to be attentive to our environmental justice needs out there, and always look to mitigate against potential harms and reduce disparities. So that's been my general position on these things. But again, I don't know the specifics of this project, but we look forward to learning more from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Janet. Who'd you first meet with as Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey?
About, 200 moms and mom allies and young kids, mothers out front. They were the first group to come to my office. I was really, really proud of that. I was happy to get any visitors at the State House. I was lonely there the first 10 days or so, but it was great. They came and...
Can you explain who they are? I assume most people know, but just...
Terrific advocacy organization, super grassroots, started not too long ago, but has just grown exponentially. Chapters across communities around this state, and they're really a wonderful environmental advocacy organization. As Attorney General, I worked closely with them on addressing issues of gas leaks, for example, methane getting out into the atmosphere and causing all sorts of harm, and they continue to be strong advocates. I've said we are committed to working with them and with other stakeholders in achieving our climate goals and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in thinking about what we need to be doing around sustainability and resilience. I've also called for, when it comes to siting decisions, when you think about the physical stuff, the plant, the stations, different things that are going to go into different places, particularly as we need to move away from fossil fuels. There's certain infrastructure that we're going to have to build out. There's also the existing environmental injustices, and one of the things I've called for is that on our Energy Siting Facilities Board, which is the group that makes decisions about where certain things are going to go, that there be an environmental justice advocate, because the siting of these things is so important to me. And so I was thrilled they presented me with bouquets of hands with messages signed, cut out hands with messages signed from young people around the Commonwealth, basically exhorting me as a leader and other leaders to do all that we can when it comes to a cleaner, healthier future.
Maura Healey, we really appreciate you being here.
Very much.
We look forward to a lot of these.
Thanks
in
for
the
having
future.
me. Great to see
And
everybody.
We really appreciate
all right,
your time.
let's work together.
Like I
Thank
said,
you.
you brought a big crowd to the Boston Public Library, so we're very grateful
Well,
for that,
there's
too.
a lot of expectation for a lot of things that need doing, and the team and I are committed to doing just that. So we'll look forward to being back again.
Thank you very
again,
much
Maura
for being
Healey.
with us. That was, of course, Governor Maura Healey for her first Ask the Governor, and we're very thrilled that she's agreed to come and talk to us and to you guys for that hour. Up next, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen with the latest about arts and theater around town. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Hey, Brian, give us an extra 30 seconds.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, live sports betting is now underway at Encore Boston Harbor and other local casinos. Woburn students are home from school again with the district's teachers on strike for its second day. And the Mass GOP is taking a vote on its leadership. Trump loyalist Jim Lyons could be ousted as chair. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for GBH comes from you and Comcast Business, offering internet solutions with Comcast Business Internet for your small business. Includes Comcast Business Security Edge and internet speeds up to 10 gigs. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply, actual speeds vary. And the Simmons Leadership Conference, Tuesday, March 14th, in person and online. A day of inspiration, skill building, and networking, featuring Gloria Estefan, Masi Alinejad, and Juju Chang. InclusiveLeadership.com.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Where are we here? We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In 23 minutes, the mayor will join us for Ask the Mayor. We're extending the show a half hour to 2:30. She'll be with us from 1:30 to 2:30 to take your questions. But first, we're joined at the Boston Public Library by GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen to describe a whole bunch of things in the arts world. And Marjorie will describe the Hopper exhibit in New York City that she saw this weekend. Jared, it's great to see you.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great, actually. And if people haven't been to the redone Whitney Museum, it's got all those great porches out there. And, of course, it's right next to the High Line where you can walk from 14th to 34th Street, I think, and peer into everybody's windows and kind of spy on them in their apartments.
You can see a lot. And it's just like the Hopper show, right? Hopper was always looking through windows, and you could definitely do that walking the High Line.
Exactly. So anyway, but that's not here, and this is. Tell us about the Huntington and the art of burning.
Yeah, there's a lot that's burning in this show as we look at a marriage coming apart. So this is a new play by Kate Snodgrass, who for years ran Boston Playwrights Theater, also the Boston Theater Marathon. So she's written this piece that's playing through February 12th, and we meet a couple kind of at a tranquil moment at the end of their marriage. They're in mediation. Her name is Patricia, his name is Jason, and it seems like things are going to quietly dissolve until they don't. And by the way, I should mention that she's a painter, and she comes in, and we see the red all over her smock, her shirt at one point, and suddenly there become a lot of allusions to Medea, and there are conversations about what the dissolution of a marriage means, what it means when the sexes come apart, because they are so vastly different in their viewpoints, and what marriage is, and what parenting is. And I should say that Kate Snodgrass explained in her notes on this piece that she was really inspired to start writing this after the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, in which she described as this deep endemic misogyny. So she really explores that in this piece. So again, the mediation falls apart, and you find this couple at odds with one another, and then suddenly during the course of the play, their older daughter has gone missing, and what has happened to her, with all of these allusions to this classic tale of Medea and and that this, of course, is a tale about a woman who, once wronged because her husband has gone off to his mistress, she kills him and their children. So what does that mean here? So there's lots of questions, lots of divide between the sexes that's being explored.
You want another important question is, how does it feel to be the guest between the governor and the mayor?
Pressure filled.
That is really, I was just thinking as you're standing here, oh my God.
I feel like a little art sorbet that's happening between two very...
A palate cleanser?
Yes, yeah.
Palate cleanser. Well,
by the way, this is there till February 12th. Am I right
February
about this?
12th,
February
yeah.
12th.
Yeah, I just want to know, since divorce is not usually a cheerful subject, and certainly a missing child isn't either, are we going to be ready to...
No. There is a lot of comedy, and I think that people find a lot of themselves in this. This is because this is about the state of marriage. This, as I said, this is inspired by conversations that we're having in the public sector, especially prompted by Brett Kavanaugh, and then the Anita Hill hearings preceding that by many years. So I think, as hard as some of the subject matter be, and it's theater, so it's heightened, there's a lot to relate to.
Can we, we're talking to Jared Bowen, can we discuss, I knew nothing about this rehearsal space and sound museum very near where we work at 1 Guest Street. Then there was dislocation. Then it seems to me the city came to the rescue. Then a developer may be coming to the rescue. Can you give us the whole narrative here?
Well, let me try to do it in broad strokes, which is in the city of Boston, we are seeing the city change. You drive into the city, you see the cranes everywhere. You know that neighborhoods are changing. Lots of older buildings are being bought and developed, or longtime owners see an opportunity for development. Well, in some of these buildings, in Alston and Brighton, Roxbury, Charlestown, they house hundreds of artists. So we're talking about more than 1,000 artists at this point who are facing losing their homes and or rehearsal space in the city. Well, of course, it's up to the developers and the landowners to do what they want with this space. But the question is becoming, well, what do you do with the artists in a city where everything is changing? And I think you can argue it's becoming somewhat sanitized as we lose spaces that have been here for decades and decades, where artists have created a neighborhood, a soul, a vibe, community engagement. Well, what happens when that goes away? And that's what's happening right now. And so the question is, where do these artists go? What I have seen over my years of reporting and looking at other examples across the country, the only thing that really works, frankly, is when you can create a model whereby the artists can own their own building. Or you have another entity, a municipality, the city of Boston, which is going to happen here, at least for the Sound Museum, for these artists that can own the building so that they're not going to face this again in another 5 or 10 years. But as we see this development, we see the gentrification, this is what's happening. I talk to artists all the time who feel that not the need. They're driven out of the city because they can't afford the rents here. They cannot afford to stay here.
Can you explain? I just want to understand what role the city had, because we have the mayor here in 15 minutes. This space that used to be the Globe on Morrissey Boulevard, that is the space that'll now have rehearsal space. Am I right about that? At 55 Morrissey?
I didn't know that, which is a great development.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't heard that.
And then ultimately, the developer, I hope I got this right, and if we're unclear, we'll revisit it next week. The developer, who is essentially kicking them out because the building was sold, is offering the city a free building down the line to rehouse them as a contribution, I assume, to the arts, right? Yeah.
Right. So this is the case with the Sound Museum. So they're leaving right near us at GBH in Brighton, and there'll be a space that the city will essentially operate that'll be available in 2 years. So they're now being given what's being described as a swing space in Dorchester for the artists to reside. For 2 years. Ultimately, then they can go move into the space that the city is providing. The city runs it, and again, you don't have to worry about the floor falling out from under you. This just happened in Lowell, by the way. It took great industry. It took benevolent benefactors and developers to come together and provide artists on Western Avenue in Lowell an opportunity for them to reside and, again, keep their building and not have to worry about this. But this is happening all across the country. I also just was in Waterville, Maine, I think it was last month, where Colby College has put about $100 million into the downtown to revitalize that, and it has brought all of the arts organizations there under one roof. And it's really the only way that they could all survive in long-term form. But here, in that case, in this case, the Sound Museum, you have the City of Boston. In Waterville, Maine, it's Colby College. So you need a big funder like that to come in.
I mean, it's an ongoing crisis. I don't want to belabor this, but didn't a ton of artists get driven out of the seaport when the seaport exploded?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's play a little sound here. Here is the original theme from a very popular HBO series. Let's play it right now. Okay. That is a chorus from The White Lotus, second season, I believe, right? Correct? And it's become this huge song all over the place. People at dance clubs, they're going crazy, dancing around. It doesn't really have a huge beat, but I guess they're...
Well, they've made it have a beat. So now we've hit the real sorbet part.
You're watching. I hope you're watching White Lotus.
I've watched both
seasons.
Yeah.
And you've watched both seasons.
Yes, I have.
I have 3 more to go, and season 2 is fabulous.
Do you know what happens in season 2?
No, you know what's unbelievable? I wasn't going to get into this. Marjorie has been telling me for maybe a month that the ending to the second season is fabulous.
It is.
So we're sitting there preparing for you this morning at 9 o'clock or whatever it is, and then in the middle of the conversation, she tells me the ending.
I didn't tell him the ending.
Excuse me.
First of all.
Look at me, please. Did you tell me the ending?
No, I didn't.
Did you tell me who expires
I told you
at the
someone
end?
wouldn't be there for season number 3. And you know what, Jim?
Well, that's
if
sort
you
of the
liked
ending.
it so much, it took you a month. You should have
That is
watched
true.
the show.
This is so true.
Spoiler alerts. People are talking about spoiler alerts for movies that were
Why don't
like
you tell everybody
1980.
here what the ending
I'm
is?
going to tell you because
Don't
they may
you
not have
dare,
had a chance.
don't.
See, they had the exact same reaction I did.
It is a great ending. It is
That's
a great
great.
ending.
Thanks for telling
and
me.
It involves someone that we like very much.
Okay,
and I'm not
well,
gonna get
Jim,
into that.
So
I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was filling in for you, I think, in December when it was wrapping up, or November, whenever it was, and word started to trickle down because I hadn't watched it. I wanted to binge it all at once. Word started to trickle out that there was a huge ending. So,
I know there's a huge ending.
I basically
didn't know what the huge ending was.
locked myself in my house and watched all the episodes.
Well, luckily, Marjorie wasn't locked in your house with you, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, but you were talking about the song.
So anyway, if you watch this show, you realize it has a insanely catchy theme song, which we just heard.
Yep.
I mean, in fact, I remember, so they remixed it slightly for the second season. I remember watching the first season, and that one I actually didn't binge. I started watching from the very first episode, so week to week, and I would not skip past the theme song because I liked it so much. It was so original. It did win an Emmy. It's by the Chilean-Canadian composer Cristobal Tapia de Veer. And
he did the first season too.
He did the first season too.
Right?
So they kind of changed it. So the first season was set in Hawaii, so it has got kind of those bird call themes and things like that. But now that this show has become so insanely popular, despite the ending maybe, you hear it in dance clubs. And I think we have a remix with one of our favorite
No, we
characters.
can't play
Yes,
the
we
remix.
do.
No, we cannot.
Yes, we can.
Because the remix has a spoiler in it.
No, it
yes,
doesn't.
it
No, it
does.
doesn't. No,
yes,
it doesn't.
does.
No, it doesn't.
Because that episode comes before.
It says trying, not...
Okay,
it's the verb.
this is Marjorie who's
We're gonna
ruining
play it.
your
You
TV
can all blame
viewing.
me, but this is not a spoiler. Totally, semi maybe. Here's a remix of the White Lotus theme song. This one was done by Candy Moore on SoundCloud, and he's using SoundCloud. Excuse me.
Thank you.
And he's using clips of Jennifer Coolidge, local actor, on top of the original song.
Went to Emerson, by the way.
And if you're very upset, just block your ears because we're going to play this right now.
Please. These gays. They're trying to murder me. Make a cliche. Do you know these gays? Please, these gays. They're trying to murder me. Please, these gays. They're trying to murder me. Please. These gays.
Okay, let's end this.
I think we need to bring the house lights down.
Can we talk about how fabulous Jennifer? I know.
Oh my God,
Jennifer Coolidge
she's great.
is a genius. I mean, every moment you see her on the screen is like a moment of just wonder and glee.
And always has been. You think of Legally Blonde and Best in Show and American Pie. She steals everything she's
She does.
in.
She's absolutely right. Can we play one more remix?
Okay.
Just to keep us in the mood
Why don't you
here?
give away a little more from the
This
story
is
with this one?
this is not going to give away anything. This is a remix of the White Lotus theme for a club, footage of a DJ who goes by the name Tiesto.
Yes, he's great.
Well, okay then.
Is it coming?
Let's not.
It's all about
The
interpretation.
third one isn't coming? Oh, no.
Okay, fine.
Here it is.
Okay, that is horrible. Enough of that. Thank you.
It's not horrible. It's great.
horrible.
I didn't realize it was both of them. But you're right. It was Lotus 1, Lotus 1, and
So
Lotus
it
2.
kind of evolved because the
Yeah.
second was set in Italy. And
Okay,
and
if
the
people haven't
third
seen
has
it-
not been announced. We're having a third season.
We're
They
having
just
a third
haven't said
season.
where it's going to be.
If people haven't seen
But
it,
some
I
of
think
us
it's
know who's not
definitely-
going to be in the third season because of Marjorie this morning.
Well, Jim, you just waited too long. You should have hurried up and watched the thing. You
that
wouldn't have a problem.
Spoiler alert, definitely expired.
It really does. I mean,
Okay.
and people that are upset about spoiler alerts, like I said, from movies that are 20
Watch
years
the
old.
damn show.
I
Is that
mean,
your position?
really, you know.
Medea killed her children? What?
Medea killed her children.
Euripides
exactly.
wrote what?
Yeah. What was that from? Like.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one last favor?
What?
I shouldn't do this on the air because I know you ruin it. Don't tell me whether Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman end up together. That's all I ask. I know they're at the airport, and that's all I really want to know.
Yes,
Can we go
okay.
to the Mystic Seaport? And the reason I am a huge. I know I'm not really the arts guy in this threesome, even though I like to think. I went to Murano, where this glass blowing happens outside Venice. Explain this. Glass blowing is so incredible. What's the name of the guy from Washington State?
Dale Chihuly.
Oh my God! Go tell us about what's going on at Mystic Seaport.
So, and you get invited to see Dale Chihuly and others. So you've been to Murano. I've been to Murano as well. Venice is a destination now. It's people argue that it's overrun with tourists, but there was a time where it wasn't. Basically, when after Napoleon sacked the region and it was down and out for a long time, people stopped paying attention to Murano and the traditions of glass blowing in Venice. But then Ruskin in the 1800s writes about this return to craft and return to artistry and artisans. And so people like John Singer Sargent and James McNeill Whistler and others, Maurice Prendergast and William Merritt Chase, all kind of became very besotted by what was happening in Italy at this time, and they all went there. And so there's a show now at the Mystic Seaport Museum. It's on through February 27th. It's organized by the Smithsonian. It's called Sargent, Whistler, and Venetian Glass, American Artists and the Magic of Murano. So these were artists who began to recognize as factories were taking hold, especially in America, and we were starting to have mass-produced goods, let's return to what artists could do. And so people like John Singer Sargent, who's very known for his very glamorous portraits and swirling about society, really gets very interested in who the workers are, what the everyday life of Venice is like. And so you see these paintings of what he's depicted, moving away from those big society portraits. And this is after, by the way, he had done Madame X, which was a sensational, controversial picture that you'll see at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Whistler does the same thing. goes to Venice and does etchings looking through doorways and into chambers and workshops depicting workers. And then what I think is so great about the Mystic Seaport Museum is that they carry this forward, backward and forward, because it is a seaport museum. You find a very intricate wedding gondola as you enter in. That's part of their collection. And you end with some of the more contemporary glass pieces and the glass makers of our time, including Dale Chihuly. So you see how this has all come full circle. But you also see, in addition to these great paintings, the glass that came out of that time that would go out around the world that people like Isabella Stewart Gardner here in Boston wanted to have in their own collections as well.
You know, we may have had this discussion about Chihuly with you. Chihuly, as I pronounce it right, in the past with you. But when I was in Seattle, what I learned, which was disturbing to me, but then I realized it probably is not that abnormal, is a lot of the stuff, and he makes these huge, incredibly, I mean, you can never forget these glass sculptures, I guess you call them, that he doesn't, in the second half of his career, he didn't do much of it at all. He directed young students, and I don't know if they're called interns, I don't even know what they're called, but young artists to do the work, but he was sort of the director. Does that trouble you at all, and is that, it's not abnormal, I guess, is it?
No, if you look back throughout history, there have always been artist workshops with Leonardo da Vinci and Rodin and others, where they're directing the work and especially in huge paintings. You'll see this all throughout Venice. One artist couldn't necessarily do an entire fresco or an entire ceiling, so they would have somebody to come, bring in the finger guy, he does fingers really well, let's have him do this, or other elements, but that is how it has always worked. As long as there's transparency about it, as long as you know that you're buying something that's coming more from the workshop than from the artist himself, I have zero problem with it.
Okay, I love these Japanese print pictures. My maiden aunts, as we call them, my school teacher maiden aunts, for some reason, I don't know, had these on their wall in their family room, and it reminds me, describe them to people, I mean, they're really
enchanting,
yes,
I think.
They are.
So this comes, I'll describe it in a second, but this comes from a Worcester Art Museum show, which is on view through March 5th, and it has the most beautiful title, The Floating World, Japanese Prints from the Bancroft Collection. Bancroft is somebody who was a big collector of these prints. Then the collection ended up at the Worcester Art Museum. But this goes back to the Japanese Edo period, which was a period of stability and peace and culture. And so we see about a span of 400 years in prints from that period in this show. And I just found them so, as I say, enchanting and colorful and vibrant. And as the centuries progress, they get more and more vibrant. But the floating world refers to sort of this exploration of higher society, but also the body and courtesans and shopping and materialism and actors and theater. It's kind of, it's a world that people often strive to be a part of, or at least to emulate. So a lot of the prints that you'll see in this show are of actors, and they're prints that people would put up in their home, not unlike teenagers who would put up the teen pinup posters that you get out of magazines or something. I mean, they all had their purpose. So as you work through this show, you'll also come across stars like Hokusai, who of course did the Great Wave, that's very iconic and part of all of our phones, not to mention probably every college dorm room. But he was very famous in his lifetime, all representing this world. But I just love this for the fact that it's a relatively small show, but you walk through and you see these, they're all woodblock prints, so you see this great texture and color and design, and again, how it all evolves. And so they're either prints in robes or gorgeous waterfalls and landscapes, but all, again, under the guise of the floating world. It seems like a piece
magical.
A place you want to climb to or fall into.
Yes,
This is the Worcester Art Museum?
At the Worcester Art Museum.
Did you tell me this morning you're moving to Worcester or something? What did you say to me this morning?
I said there's a piece in the Globe today about how prices in houses in
Affordable?
Worcester have gone through the roof.
Oh, gone through the roof?
They've gone through the roof,
opposite.
yes.
Oh.
Well, they were affordable, and Worcester's, picked up its game considerably the last few years. They got the new Red Sox stadium out there, too, and it's got a lot of beautiful houses, but it's not, I guess, as affordable as it was.
It's definitely changing. It's like everything else. You can see it in the restaurants and the shops, and especially that whole area. In fact, I stopped there on my way out of the Worcester Art Museum. There's a whole shopping area, antiques, plant store, a whole food hall outside of the Polar Park area that you can visit. And this is all a reflection of this new culture that's happening in Worcester.
So, Jared, we love you, but the mayor's coming in 3 minutes. You have two choices.
I can wrap it up.
We can discuss very briefly what's at the Cooper at Harvard, and what's on your show, or we can just discuss what's on your show and do the Cooper next week because it's there through June. So
Yeah,
you decide.
Cooper's a major show, so why don't we hold that for next week?
Okay, so what are you doing Friday night? Do you know?
I do remember
You
this
do.
week. We're
What is
talking
it?
to the great opera star Anthony Roth Costanzo, who is a countertenor, and he
What's that mean?
explains that process. So
What does
that's
that
somebody
mean?
who sings in a really high voice.
Oh.
And so he is very famous for taking on the role of Akhenaten in the Philip Glass opera, a role which he starts off completely nude. So we talk about that.
Wow.
Does it require bravery to do that? This is a role he's performed many times and will continue to do because, again, he's associated with it. He talks about what he has to do with his voice to get those high octaves. Speaking of high octaves, he has this great album with Justin Vivian Bond, the performer, called An Octave Apart, where he's bringing opera to pop songs with Justin Vivian Bond. And he also talks about the cancer diagnosis that he had and how he's still able to sing even after that.
So does completely nude mean completely nude?
That means completely nude.
Completely nude.
No clothes.
Okay.
Spoiler
No, I
alert.
understand what completely
Spoiler
nude
alert.
means.
I have a quick question. How is it that certain men can achieve those very high notes? Is that just the way they're born? Do they have to practice that from the time they're a kid? Do they try to hold on to the voice they had when they were 10 years old?
See,
How does that
I
happen?
could tell you the ending of Open Studio and how that happens, but I'm not going to do that.
Oh, it's
so
gonna
you'll
keep
have
us
to
in suspense.
That's why you're
tune
supposed
in to Friday night at 8:30.
So is that the whole show, or is there more going on there?
No,
You don't
and
know
then
what the
we
other
have
things.
other things too.
You know, this is unbelievable. No, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I will.
But you're going to.
No, well, how many shows do you do a week again?
One.
One. And when you're asked, you asked every time you're here what's on the show?
I am
He
asked
is.
every
Ever.
time.
Yep.
And so you know one segment on your whole show.
Well, we spend a lot of time on it. We're also now.
Oh, you just looked it up. Okay.
do.
The other things are what exactly?
So Hamilton's in town.
Hamilton's in town. Where
yes.
were you? We were there the other night. Where the hell were you?
I was on vacation.
Oh, you were on vacation.
Yeah. So I couldn't make Hamilton. But I did sit down with Leslie Odom Jr., who won the Tony for Hamilton a few years ago. So we're looking at that interview. Also, this is kind of sad, but he was such a great figure in the Boston art scene. George Fifield died in November, and he is the founder of Boston Cyber Arts. So we look back at the last conversation that I had with him. He's such a great, great guy.
Can we end with something totally unnecessary? You've seen Hamilton 3 times, is that right?
Yes.
I've seen it twice. We had the guy who played Hamilton on with us the day after we saw it, and the woman who played the sister of the woman he married. If people have not seen it, when someone says, I've said this before on the radio, something's the greatest thing ever, most of us who are cynical say, it can't be that good. It is. It is otherworldly wonderful from the first second.
Oh, people were
till
betting.
It's over.
People were betting on sports betting. They wanted
What's
to bet
it?
how many times you would say otherworldly.
Well, I've only said it
in the
once.
segment today.
You
I
just
know.
won.
They disappointed.
Unfortunately, it took 2 hours and 29 minutes to get
Yeah.
there. But I'm telling you, get tickets. And there's also, isn't there some
Yes,
lottery?
because the tickets are very expensive, but they have I think 40 tickets a day for
$10,
$10.
yeah.
You can get a
Go to
lottery.
the
I'm not sure
website
how
and
you
check
do
it
it,
out.
but you go to the website and get it because it is one of those things that it is the best thing I've ever seen.
Well, and the great thing about that show too is if you do see it multiple times, then you can, once you get over kind of the crazy, oh my God, I'm seeing Hamilton, that nature, you start to settle into it, and you hear so much more in the lyrics, and you hear more,
totally
see more
true.
in the
It's
story,
great.
and there's
It's
so
great.
much more to absorb in it. Yeah, it's a great show. I was very sorry to miss it. When I was out
By
of
the way,
town.
you did an excellent job as the center of the Healy Woo sandwich. I want you to know, you really.
That was,
you
yeah.
were
Oh,
starting
I
to
get
clear it.
applause for
Thank
that.
you.
Jared,
I'll take the governor and the mayor's applause.
thank you very
Joe. It's
much
great to see
for
you.
being
Thank
here. We've been speaking with GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, who joins us every week. And up next, as promised, round 2, I should say, Open Studio is on every Friday night, 8:30 on GBH2. So today's Tuesday, so that's Friday. 3 more days. Open Studio, you can find out
Even
why
if
the
it
guy-
wasn't Tuesday, it'd be Friday.
Yeah, you can find out why the man is able to keep those high notes, how he gets there and keeps them his whole life. Okay, opera singer, I should have said. Here's the White Lotus.
It is pretty great.
It is pretty great. It is pretty great. Yeah, White Lotus. You gotta give it a little time. Sometimes the first 2 episodes you won't like
That's
it.
not true.
But
They're
keep
great.
going.
It's fabulous.
Okay. Up next, as promised, round 2 of our double hitter. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is going to be here. We're extending our show until 2:30 today to make sure you get the full hour of Ask the Mayor with the Mayor, who's gracious enough to stay with us. Mayor Wu is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH is All Things Considered with Arun Roth.
What GBH adds to NPR's national program of All Things Considered is, let's be glib about this, but it's GBH.
Trusted local news with NPR.
We fill in the local stories that you're not hearing about from all the local communities. We also look at the national stories in a very particular local lens.
Weekdays from 4 to 7 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Comcast. Through Project UP, Comcast is committing $1 billion to help provide people with the skills, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed in a digital world. Learn more at comcast.com/projectup. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Before I introduce our next guest, I was remiss before. We should give a congratulations to one of the wonderful people who we work with at the Newsfeed Cafe, Fritz over there, who's one of the truly great guys. Just got married, just got back from his honeymoon in the Dominican Republic, and he is really a sweetheart. Congratulations, Fritz. We're really happy for you. We're joined now at the Boston Public Library by the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. She will be with us till 2:30. We're extending the show. You can call or text her if you have questions at 877-301-8970, or find Brendan, as some people have already done, and you can ask her a question directly at the Boston Public Library. Good to see you, Mayor Wu.
Good to see you both.
Yeah,
this is a huge crowd for Fritz today.
I know.
Standing room only.
Exactly. Well, you know, Mayor, well, before we get into all the tough stuff around the city, let's start with.
Oh, and I didn't bring food this time.
Oh, brother.
But
she brought us presents. Every time you come,
well,
we're going to bring presents.
It's more a show and tell, but I disguise it as a present. So it's Lunar New Year season. These are lucky red envelopes, as is a tradition to give.
Thank you.
Usually there's money in it, but I don't. This is the last place I want to be giving you an envelope stuffed with cash.
Exactly.
So inside there's an invite to the city's Lunar New Year celebration that's happening this year.
Oh,
well, thank you.
That's great.
Well,
Thank you very much.
in light of the fact you do embarrass us every single month, and we, of course, yet again, when you bring food, and we never do, Sally Ting from Needham, who's got a home bakery, brought us some of the most beautiful baked goods I've ever seen. And she said if we wanted to give half of them to the mayor, it'd be fine with her. So I want you to know
I'll take it.
we are re-gifting
Absolutely.
some beautiful items from Sally Ting, and they look beautiful, and we thank you, and I'm sure the mayor does
Are they
too.
sugary over there, Jim? I could use a little sugar hit.
Do you really want one? I'll have one delivered to you right away.
One delivered to me right away. Okay, so like I said, before we get to the all the political things and all the stuff you're dealing with as a mayor, you came here, I think, from this morning, or maybe just before you got here, from visiting someone who really wanted to meet you.
Oh, Norman.
Yeah, tell us about
That's a great
Norman.
story.
Norman is a gem and really part of the bedrock of Boston's community. He lives at the Huntington YMCA and has been there, and they have a small residential community, but he's been there for 6 decades now, 60 years, since he first found a home there in his early 20s, and he's just such a treasure. I learned that so I had learned about this because they'd done an interview with him right around the holidays when he was moving in. They'd refurbished his apartment and made it modern and new and beautiful. And in that interview, he talked about all the folks he had met and just has specifically called me out for not having visited him before. So I did right and made that right by going to spend a little time with him this morning.
This is at the Y on Huntington Avenue?
Yeah.
Oh, and he's been there for 6 decades.
60 years.
Why?
He by choice, has he not?
Yes,
I mean, he
yes.
likes it there. It's a CVB. Am I right? It's Channel 5, I think, did the original story. Am I right?
WBZ.
Oops, I'm sorry. Channel 4.
It's okay.
WBZ did the story. So I know it's hard for you to answer this question because it requires you to be not humble, which you pretty much are. How excited was he to have you there?
Oh, it was so good. Well, first, I think, okay, I'll just frame it this way. He was sitting in a chair next to the table with the YMCA tablecloth on it, and he had his walker in front of him, and he said he wanted to show me something that was really important. He opened the seat of it, kind of flipped up the seat of his walker, and there was a picture of him with Mayor Menino right there
Oh
that he
my
kept
gosh.
bringing. And so I'm just, I think, a reminder of him from that moment. But it was lovely, and we talked about all of the history and everything that he's experienced as part of this changing institution and this part of the city. And he shared with me his favorite movies, which are all quite scary. Poltergeist, King Kong. It was a little bit much for me.
You know, can we do something? Ordinarily, when we have someone like the mayor with us, we ask a few questions before we read texts and emails and calls. But the first question from the audience here actually relates to a discussion we just had with Jared Bowen about rehearsal space and that sort of thing. So Charlie, a musician, has a question for you. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So I am a 15-year musician in Boston, and I've been practicing at the Charlestown Rehearsal Studios for 10 of those, and before that I was at the Sound Museum in Allston. It's been in the news a lot recently, and you just covered it. All of these rehearsal studios are under threat, and these are the last 3 left in the entire city. And development in the Seaport eliminated many practice spaces before that. Development in Cambridge has eliminated many. And now we're kind of reaching the end of the road with the Sound Museum closing for at least 2 years, et cetera, and now CRS possibly closing with no replacement. So there are thousands of people like me in the city. Many hundreds of us might soon be without a place to work on what we work on with really no plan in place. So I guess my question is, it's a big issue, but my question is, I've heard medium and long-term ideas about how to support the arts in the city, but are there any kind of short and immediate term things that can help me and the people like me not lose our space and really kind of be able to continue doing what we're doing?
So I want to get to the Zoom out in 1 second, but just so I understand and kind of getting a pulse check on how I have been following what's been happening on the ground. You were at the Sound Museum very recently, and have you been part of the program where the tenants there are basically being connected to the space in Dorchester and all set that way, or?
So actually, no. I moved from Allston to Charlestown about 12 years ago.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay, that's super helpful. I just want to make sure that actually happened because that. So, as Charlie says, in some ways we are way behind the ball on this issue, and every time that a particular building has come up, there's been an all hands on deck effort to find a solution that works for this particular community and this particular set of artists and creatives. With the Humphrey Street Studio in Upham's Corner, there was a massive effort and city funding and a new plan for those artists to now own that building with a co-op structure and develop affordable housing on site. With the Sound Museum, there are arrangements where ultimately the new development there is going to create a whole new, larger building for the arts. Again, this is several years down the line with the development project, and we've been able to settle an interim solution where the tenants will stay where they need to be for the time being and then transition to a space in Dorchester that some of my colleagues have been very, very helpful with securing.
This is the old Globe building in Dorchester, is it not? 55 Morrissey, is that?
I actually don't think is that.
Okay,
I'll double check just to,
sure.
maybe we can make sure we check the location on that one so I'm not totally wrong. I haven't been to the Stevens space yet. But there are 2 other buildings.
It's right next door to where the Globe was, where we used to actually do radio.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Channel
Go ahead.
56.
Yeah, that's right.
It was there for years too,
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
But there are 2 other buildings that we know of right now, each with a kind of different situation that we are rushing to address. And one of them, we feel pretty good about the plan for those artists who are looking to stay and transition into the Sound Garage and other spaces. The other, we're still working on it, but it cannot be this kind of whack-a-mole situation as the spaces dwindle and the stress that puts on individual artists. And so we dedicated a significant portion of our federal recovery funds to the arts. It'll be the biggest investment and infusion, and soon there's going to be a call that goes out to really help direct these funds to some of the organizations that can be the umbrella and home for these spaces. But there's a combination of the real estate market plus supports and just life stability in terms of incomes and housing for artists as people in a community working jobs, and then the city's kind of larger arts and culture landscape and who is included in that. On the first front, on the real estate side, this is why when we've we're shifting how we do development in the city and focusing on planning, really integrating all of the aspects that need to set the terms for how the city will grow and the permissions that will be given out for development to follow that. And that's why on that Planning Advisory Council that's been set up to coordinate the city's activities, for the first time, arts will have a firm seat in that conversation from the beginning.
Charlie, thank you. We appreciate your question. Speaking of development, before we get back to calls and texts, one of the centerpieces of your State of the City the other night was talking about the, for lack of a better expression, reorganization of the BPDA. Could you explain, for people who are not involved in the industry, what this reorganization will mean for them in real kinds of ways?
Okay, how much time do we have on the BPDA? So the really brief summary version is that the structure by which we make decisions around how we grow as a city, where we can build buildings, how high, what type, what requirements are surrounding that, has really been governed in large part through a kind of Frankenstein organization that's been built up, mishmash of things over many, many years. The underlying structure still dates back to the urban renewal era. When cities around the country, you can Google this, look it up on Wikipedia, urban renewal, even though those words might sound like we're investing in cities, it has a very particular technical meaning, and it was from an era of the late 50s, 60s into 70s, where the idea was that cities were hotbeds for urban decay and blight, and we needed tools to bring economic investment, commercial development in to kind of have jobs come into cities. Boston is one of the most nationally known cases for how we exercise those urban renewal powers with the West End and clearing of so-called slums, really working class immigrant communities of color, to build large buildings that would help spur investment at the time. Now, we can have a whole separate debate on a different show about whether that was the right approach, whether that was the right way to bring jobs in the city. But no matter what you think about that, we're in a very different moment today. Boston is not a city that is filled with urban blight and so-called decay. And the idea that we would clear people out to create space for jobs or companies or buildings that eventually will provide things for people, we're actually in a different model with our whole economy, especially after the pandemic. It's not so much that people follow jobs, but jobs follow people, right? The reason why Lego is coming to Boston is because this is where the talent is. This is where people want to live with the cultural amenities that we have, the quality of life, the benefits in this ecosystem. And so we want to harness and hold on to all of that. We have a very different set of needs for development. The top line is that we're reorienting the structure from focusing on blight and all that to putting planning and people first, and having the big issues, the urgent issues that we do need to prioritize today, resiliency and our climate threats, affordability and how expensive our housing market and everything else is going, and equity, the deep disparities that have been driven by development decisions. These are the focus today, and ultimately, as we get the right structures in place, the idea is that we will finally move to update our zoning code. Hasn't been comprehensively updated since 1965. These are the rules that define who can build without having to get a whole set of extraordinary permissions and waivers and so-called variances from the rules. Our zoning code is so out of date that 95% plus of new buildings need a variance from the rules, which means the rules are basically obsolete. And if we were to change that, we would have clear consistency, predictability, and baselines that match our needs today. We also need to just ensure that we are speeding up the processes as they exist. Again, when you layer one thing on top of another, oftentimes you're caught up in hoops and hoops and hoops, and this department weighs in, and that one, and that one. They're all for important reasons, but money and the budgets to go through that process ends up eating up what could be making projects more affordable.
Thank you, Mayor Wu.
Mayor Wu, I have a good email here from Jim in Rockport. He says, "Dear Mayor Wu, I worked at the Boston Rent Board when rent control ended and saw the suffering that ensued and the rents that rose and the elderly and low-income people that were displaced as a result of that. I hope you will stick to your guns and try your best to reinstitute rent control for the poor and suffering tenants of the city of Boston." I know you've filed legislation up at the Beacon Hill. What's going on?
We actually have not yet filed, and it would be with the City Council first. but we have been working with our advisory committee to finalize that proposal and hope to have it soon for the city council.
Okay, sorry.
The committee had been working over the last year to really study models that are already in place in other parts of the country, Oregon, state of Oregon, California, other jurisdictions, and to look at the conditions in Boston today. And I want to be clear, sometimes how someone feels about the idea of rent control depends on their understanding of the term. There's wide ranges of what that means, and also what you think the point and the purpose is. Rent control as an individual tool will not solve our housing crisis. It is not a way to generate more housing and increase the number of units that are affordable for residents. It is a way to do a particular thing, which is also really important, and I would argue just as important in this moment in our economy, which is to prevent those residents who are already here in our city from being pushed out by dramatic increases in rent that you cannot plan your life around when they come all of a sudden. And so we're putting together, our plan is a comprehensive integration of a bunch of different tools to boost housing, speed up processes, put money to helping people buy homes, and keep the people who are in our units today stable in their homes.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about that? First of all, we asked the governor at noon if she would reaffirm her position that she expressed to us a few months ago, that she, quote, absolutely supported legislation, even though she wants to see the details, where there was a local option rent control. And even though the Globe said when you brought your proposal out that she was non-committal, she was not non-committal today. She said she has always supported that, and she supports this, subject to details. But I want to talk about the details, though, if I may quickly. One, you, I think, really wisely exempted new development for the first 15 years in your proposal. Yet in the same article, some developer spokesperson says this is going to inhibit new development. What am I know I have a bias in this, so I will admit it. How can you say that? How can one say that when it's being exempted for the first 15 years of its existence? Is there something I'm missing or no?
I think, again, sometimes people just have a gut reaction to a political term and they haven't read the details of the proposal. And sometimes there's a larger feeling that when capital and funds are so fluid across the country, you have to create a feeling, right, a vibe that this is a welcoming community and we're not antagonistic. I believe that the best way to create those feelings is, in fact, to speed up our processes, be reliable, predictable, change our zoning code and all of that. But as you say, we went to very intense balancing and calculations to ensure that this would not harm the ability to reach our other goals of increasing the supply of housing and affordable housing. So there is that, it is tied to inflation, so it really is by market conditions. It is, there's the proposal that's on the table is a 6% plus CPI inflation cap on the rate of increase. Most years inflation is 1.5% to 2.5%, so this would be something like a 7 or 8% rate of increase that is allowed with an overall cap of 10. So in a year like this, where it's closer to 7% inflation, wildly out of control, it would still be at 10 as the maximum.
Are you open to lowering that number, by the way? I think the number is high. I mean, I know it's inflation's aberrationally high. In your discussion with community leaders, city councilors, are you open to dropping this 10% ceiling?
This goes into the legislative process now with the city council, and this is our proposal that we believe, the advisory committee is going to continue finalizing, but we will end up putting forward something that represents our best belief of what the right balance point is.
So you're open. Is that a fair statement?
Anything that, as a former city councilor, anything that goes before the council is going to go through a real process.
Just one last question, and then I promise we're going to get to the calls. My apologies, but Marjorie started with rent control. It's a really important topic to a lot of people on both sides of the issues. The governor just said she supports, the concept. She wants to see the details. When you approach a legislator, and historically, since the repeal of rent control in '94, Beacon Hill has not been supportive of rent control, and your representative says politely, why is it your business what the people and leaders of Boston do for the people of Boston? What answer does one get? This is a local option. It wouldn't affect any other community. If your legislation were to become law, Boston could vote to do it or not to do it. What is the answer as to why the state should butt into any of these things?
I think people look to Boston for what is standard setting, and there might be some worry. If you are worried about putting a system like this in place in another part of the city, maybe your thinking is that this would open the door and it's a slippery slope and this and that. I mean, I have arguments against all of that. And I actually feel that the best counter is that let us get the data from us, and then you can make informed decisions. But we have done our own research. We've done reports. We've done a whole year of digging in. We've looked at the comps of different real estate proposals. Most financial institutions, when they give the finances to even help build new rental buildings, the estimates that they have for how much they project as to what revenues could be and all that, they're not projecting more than 5 to 7% rent increases anyway.
Yeah.
And so we're really talking about putting guardrails on what exists today, situations where landlords in certain parts of the city that are kind of more hot for development or there's an opportunity are imposing double-digit rent increases that are unnecessary and completely very destabilizing for our community.
Let's go to Lois in Mission Hill. You've been very patient. Thank you for calling the show. Hi. Lois.
Oh,
Lois
gave up, I think.
We're going to
Jim.
put Lois on hold for a second. Maybe turn the radio down. Can we go down to Sherry in Roxbury, please? Sherry, you are on Boston Public Radio with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Mayor Wu. Thank you for taking
Hello.
the call. So I wanted to say thank you for coming out to speak about the Tyree Nichols. I think that was important. But I think that a lot of fear and anxiety is being created by not releasing the names in the Saeed Faisal case and not having independent investigations with Justin Root and Terrence Coleman. That's all right here in Boston. Where do you stand on that?
We should explain who Syed Faisal is, the young man who was killed in Boston. Cambridge, rather. The police said he was carrying a knife. He was shot and killed. He was a 20-year-old, I think, student at UMass Boston, and they're not releasing, as Sherry said, the name of the police officer who shot him, and residents there are very upset about the lack of information they have about the case.
And lack of body cameras, which I was not even aware of, even though I live in Cambridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor Wu.
I won't get into way back in the 1800s when Brookline decided not to let Boston annex them, and then we stopped growing and as a municipality, and so we have all these teeny tiny lines that divide us. But this is at least some of the situations you mentioned are not directly within the purview of the city of Boston, and so we're here as allies and those who are looking to set the best possible standards of community policing and involvement and accountability here in the city. We recognize that what we do here really is held up as a national standard, as a place that, not only the first police department in the country, but the first place that really committed to community policing and thinking about doing this in a different way than most others had been. The specific, some of the situations you mentioned are in Boston, and we have been putting in, generating momentum on some of the situations involved. For example, with Terrence Coleman, I've had the chance to speak with some of the family members involved over the years and understand personally that when there is a mental health situation at the root of a public safety call, that is it adds layers of complication that sometimes we are not preparing our law enforcement, our armed first responders to be able to meet the needs fully. And so we actually have launched and are in progress of an alternative response system where EMS and our 911 call takers are, when there is a call that is a nonviolent call, specifically with a mental health component to it, there is a response that you can either have a clinician come out, or you can be connected live to a clinician. That there might be some sort of mental health first aid on the phone, or a variety of scenarios. We continue to refine that and work alongside community members to ensure that we are always doing better.
But it's a policy. I know you're not in charge of Cambridge. It's been 27 days since Mr. Faisal was killed. Is there, when you look at Memphis and the speed with which there was disclosure, both of the video, the facts, the firing, the indictment of these 5 cops and subsequently EMTs, and a 6th cop has been suspended, is there ever any reason for almost a month to not let the public know who is responsible for the shooting and killing of a resident of your community?
knowing a little bit of kind of the depth of consequences that can go into each step of these kinds of decisions, I can't begin to guess from the outside of what is causing what to happen there. I do know that when there is clear body camera footage, that provides a lot of, it just puts you at a different starting point in terms of the transparency, the certainty, and the clarity of knowing which names are even involved and how to address that and have the proper accountability and consequences.
Can you imagine a circumstance where you wouldn't tell the people of Boston who shot and killed a resident of Boston, a police officer, for 27 days?
If we knew who that was, no, absolutely not. But that might be, again, I don't want to speculate, but it's difficult, and I believe it has served Boston, our residents and our officers very well to have body-worn cameras, and would encourage other jurisdictions also to provide that level of transparency for residents.
Mayor Wu, we've been talking a lot about the police today, the Tyree Nichols case, the Faisal case in Cambridge. There's problems. We were talking with the governor about this, problems with the investigations up in Springfield and Worcester. And, we've talked a lot, obviously, about the Boston police in terms of people that had been disciplined or even fired by previous commissioners getting back on the job, people who had been accused of domestic violence or of taking money and stuff. I know you're in negotiations right now with the Boston Police Union. What's happening, and what would you like to see changed?
Yeah, I think we're still working through what the next steps in the process are. The city has been very clear with the involvement and kind of a difference in the process this year of really taking this out to the public and having some stakeholder meetings, having public conversations where our labor negotiators and those involved have been answering questions in a public forum, and making sure residents know why something that feels as esoteric as a legal document with very technical terms, that actually is it actually contains many of the ways in which the operations of the department and accountability or lack thereof can work. And so we remain committed to a contract that will take care of the health and well-being of our officers, address some of the issues that they've been facing on that front, as well as ensure accountability for the residents and the constituents that we serve. And I've heard very positive feedback from many groupings in conversations we have with officers and with the department themselves about they know in Boston we'd rely on the trust of residents to do our jobs well. That is where public safety comes from, and we need to earn that trust. Everybody recognizes that, and that means that when there are those who should not be on the job, we all acknowledge that this is a very, very important and consequential role, and it's not for everyone. And when there are those who should not be serving, it is in everyone's best interest, including our officers, for there to be a swift resolution and recognition of that.
And that's one of the things you're focusing on, as I understand, changes to the disciplinary process for officers. Because right now, I believe they all go to arbitration. And
yeah, it can drag on years and years. So discipline and overtime are two of our bigger buckets that we're hoping for changes in. The amount of public resources that goes to paying for overtime, which is really driven by a couple factors, including the current medical leave policies. About 10% of our patrol force, when we first started this conversation, have been out on extended medical leave for over a year at this point, which means others are filling their roles, usually on overtime 10%? And being forced mandatorily to do those.
Is one of those 10% the guy who was at the January 6th demonstration who still hasn't been disciplined, has he, or his case resolved, or has it?
That has been in a process.
In a process. We have to take a break.
Yeah, we're talking with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She's going to be with us until 2:30 today. She's very kindly agreed to stay an extra half hour to take our questions and yours. If you want to get in touch with the mayor, we'll try to get to as many as we can. The number's 877-301-8970. You're listening to. We also have a homing mic out there too that we can get to in a minute too at the Boston Public Library. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library.
And also, I'm supposed to say you were listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston.
Celebrate Valentine's Day with GBH. Join us at our Brighton studios for the next Stories from the Stage event, inspired by true love. This soiree takes place on February 14th and features local storytellers. You'll also enjoy delicious treats and artisan cocktails, all included with your ticket. It's a great way to celebrate Valentine's Day with your friends and loved ones. Be sure to reserve your spot now. Tickets at gbh.org/events.
Support for our programs comes from you and the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where MBA and master's degree students can build vital business skills through experience. northeastern.edu/business. And Walden Local Meat, 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised beef, pork, and chicken, and seafood from local farmers, hand-delivered to your door. Committed to supporting local food for communities. Membership options and more at waldenlocalmeat.com.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. It is 2:04, and yes, we are still live on the radio with the mayor of the city of Boston. Kindly enough, agreed to extend her stay till 2:30. Her monthly visit. She'll be with us for the next 25 minutes. Can I ask you a thing before we get back to the calls? You spoke at the dedication of the Embrace, and I know that Marjorie and I know I can speak for her, think it's one of the most beautiful, powerful statements that one could possibly make. You obviously know about the controversy that is...
I went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I think it was the next week. And I told everyone off there. It was our monument. We're proud of it. We love it.
Has it given you any second thoughts, the criticism?
No. That is the point of good art. It is drawing people into the conversation, makes you think. And it's also from the get-go, this monument was about much more than the physical structure that would be there. It is a whole community effort. It is tied to education efforts, ongoing resources and organizing around racial justice. And so it's a symbol, and I think it's beautiful and has the names of all of the local trailblazers. But
have you been there at night yet?
No.
It is
no,
gorgeous.
That's not true. We did hold the vigil.
Oh, of course,
there.
that's
Yep.
right, with the underlighting. It's incredible.
Yep.
We have somebody else who has a question from the audience here. Is that correct? Robert, are you Robert?
Yes.
Hello, Robert. Welcome to the show. You're on with Mayor Wu.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
My question is about the city streets, the roads, the conditions, and I have kind of a multi-part question, I guess. The roads just seem to be getting worse and worse.
Do you mean potholes?
Potholes. Mm-hmm. Construction is done and patched up terribly, and that's a lot of it too. Is there any sort of plan to fix the streets? And I'm someone that drives a car as well as a bike, and I know you're putting in bike lanes and working on that, but the roads it's dangerous. It's dangerous for me as a person on a bike, as well as just driving around, the wear and tear of my car and the conditions, people trying to swerve to avoid potholes and problems. And then is there accountability of, if there is construction done and they patch up a hole, it seems like a terrible job is done. And also, I'm a South End resident on Tremont Street, and that project seems to be going on and on and on, and it seems to be a terrible job being done with that. And I don't know what kind of accountability is for that whole project in the South End.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. And I will follow up to get you, if you give your email to someone from our team, I'll make sure you get a direct update on where the South End project is going and timelines and all that. Let me start with, because I spend a lot of time obsessing about potholes personally, and have, forced our public works team to let me accompany them and understand the science of how it happens and what you have to do to tamp down the asphalt and what their routines are. And so this is, in fact, what I love most about the job of city government. So one thing that I have learned over the course of this, because I hear you, when you drive around, it does seem like we're constantly fixing potholes. The response time for 311 when a pothole is reported is better than ever before, but it's still, when you look around, it still feels like they're everywhere. And I have learned that, in fact, this new kind of shifting weather, temperature really, situation that we're in, is wreaking havoc on the roads. The worst thing for potholes to form is when the temperature dips below freezing and then comes back up again, because then you get the water in, freezes to ice and expands, and then loosens up as water again and gets rattled around. And so when before it used to be kind of warm, colder, freezing, warmer, and a kind of solid pattern. And now there's a lot of fluctuation in the temperatures, which we do our best to anticipate and find solutions for. And so that's not an excuse, but one thing that I learned that I found really interesting in terms of a little bit of an explanation of why we're seeing something a little bit different. The construction situation also, there have actually been changes to federal law recently. The telecom companies lobbied, and there were some provisions changed where the reimbursement that municipalities get when roads need to be dug up to install different things, and whether it's Wi-Fi or this or that, we used to have much more direct mitigation for us to patch up the roads properly and this and that. And the company largely is responsible for it now, but there's been a shift there that we are still trying to process the results from. And so there are some pieces that are moving around. We have a lot of people thinking about how to accelerate and speed up and be more responsive everywhere than we can. I will, it might not sound like comfort right now, but when you do see a pothole, we are very good, and I'm so proud of the team and how quickly they get out there. That does go directly into the queue and the service requests of how our public works team handles things. So they will be out filling one pothole, and if something pops up that's nearby them, you could see them changing their route to go right to it. And so that also gives us data on where we need to think about road conditions. The roads are on a resurfacing plan that is, factors in equity and timing, and we want to keep roads, if you maintain them a little bit, they last a lot longer than if you let something crumble, and then it's way more expensive to fix it. So there's a rotating schedule, but we do really try to factor in the direct requests that come in.
Thank you very much for your question. We appreciate it. You mentioned Lego before. The headquarters moving from Enfield. Is it Enfield? Where is it? Enfield in Connecticut to Boston. 700 workers. A couple of things I found really interesting. One, I loved that your economic development guy was honest enough to say, we didn't have that much to do with this. The city itself attracted and the talent. You're smiling. I hope that's an accurate reflection of what he said. It was.
I said we should just frame it as we got the deal done in one day.
That's okay, fine. But there are a couple of things here.
And a lot of work went into creating the atmosphere from all different sectors for that. But it was a very pleasant and exciting development.
Well, I'm hoping there's a huge moral to the story. I'm not one who believes in these bidding wars where you give $1 billion to get Amazon to come. No subsidies, from what I understand.
That's correct.
No tax incentives. Coming to a city where there have been a lot of transportation problems, as you talk about, their housing affordability issues, yet they decided this is the place they wanted to be, which I think is huge, actually. So is there a moral to this story, or is Lego an aberrational one and done kind of thing? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Companies now, more than ever, are tied to where their employees want to live and the types of experiences in their non-work hours that they need to have. This access to support structures like childcare, or being in a city whose stated mission is to be the greenest city in America and the most family-friendly city in America. I think for us, that Lego in some ways is the perfect encapsulation of that. It's about science and engineering and connecting every generation into the idea of creating new possibilities. They have strong partnerships with many of our research institutions in the area, and particularly with MIT, and we look to help enhance that and tie the Boston Public Schools into that too.
So if this was close to a done deal and you got a call from the United States CEO of this, it's a Danish company, right? Yeah, a Danish company, and said, all we need, Mayor Wu, is a small tax break. We need a small bump down on our tax liability to the city for the first few years. Would you have entertained such a notion, or is your attitude no deals like that for people?
There are lots of places where we are trying to think about the long-term pieces of everyone's lives that need to fit together. I won't say that it's never worth it to ensure that we're bringing some benefit to our residents. There's often a need for accountability tied to those benefits, whether it's clawback structures or a real conversation about what the additional pieces are for our residents and the infrastructure that's needed. But in some ways, the best thing that we can do to attract economic development and business and jobs is to tackle our housing crisis, our transportation system, our school system, and ensure that we can be a community that's planning for the long term.
By the way, the governor also told us she supports your move to have a Boston seat on the T board. I assume you knew that, but I wasn't aware of it till today. What kind of reception are you getting on that from the legislature?
We came so close. Everyone's in support of the idea. We had votes affirming this from the House, the Senate, and even a signature from the former governor. It just got caught up in a little bit of finishing the language at the end, and so we're hoping that this session will make it through.
Kate, you're in Cambridge. You're on Boston Public Radio with the mayor of Boston. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Is this Kate?
No, you're Kate. I'm not
Hi.
Kate. I'm Jim. Go ahead.
Mayor Wu, I'm wondering if when you talked about housing for homeless, you've talked about empty lots and things like that, and I'm wondering if you have thought about halfway houses and also giving money to residents who, you know how you give money to developers, giving money to residents who would want to turn their houses into a boarding house and be able to live the rest of their life in the house with, someone who is making the meals and doing some of the boarding. In addition to that, they've had stuff in California where they've had multi-use, like where it was a hotel, so lower for people coming in to visit, and also they take they have a room. They take the sink and put it into like a kitchen sink so that they can wash their hands for the bathroom, and also it can be kitchen use, and then they have a microwave in there, and you could have a kettle and things like that. So they could have some meal in the room if they wanted to, with a little bistro table. Because it seems to me to take somebody homeless and put them in a situation where they have to start paying all these bills, making their meals and all this other stuff, and they're used to having a very small space. It makes more sense to me to have boarding houses and the idea of a halfway house.
Kate, thank you for the call.
And I'm wondering if you've thought about doing that, and also helping older residents who, especially with the census, people who
We
are
got it.
alone.
Kate, we got a
Kate.
lot of calls, so let's let the mayor get in here, please.
How about
Thank
it, Mayor
you very
Wu?
much.
Thank you, Kate, clearly you've put a lot of thought into the possibilities, and we are trying to take a similarly creative and let's think about every possible option approach to this. Often when we are working with providers who are serving residents who are unhoused, we see there's multiple needs all at once that have to be met and supported. Last night, starting right around midnight, was our annual census of unhoused residents, and so several dozen city workers, local providers, volunteers fanned out across the city to not only count how many residents were sleeping on the streets, but to engage in conversation and understand what their life path had been so far, what could be helpful, did they know about the services that were available, could we provide any immediate and long-term services. I had several conversations myself, and many people who I spoke to had been living on the streets for 6 years, 12 years. I met someone who was a chef working at a restaurant when the pandemic shut down and then lost his income and his housing. I met someone who was an iron worker and then had a personal tragedy, and the grief and loss of losing family members spiraled into substance use and lost income and lost housing. Housing is the foundation of being able to build back all of those other pieces of your life. And people said to me last night, we just need a little push, just a little push, a little wind beneath our wings, and we are ready, hungry to do this and work and get back at it. And people have been seeking treatment and services and healthcare. So our model that we've been showing in Boston, where we really focus on supportive housing, makes a big, big difference. And we need more of that housing. So love to talk more. I think some of our service providers might be the best partners to explore your idea with. But we have been thinking about in all sorts of other kinds of housing. We need more senior housing in general. We need more housing for families. Could there be multi-generational arrangements that were explored? Everything has to be in the discussion.
Kate, thank you for your call. We appreciate it.
Mayor, there was a piece in the Globe the other day talking about busing does not improve academic outcomes for Boston kids of color. I didn't realize until I read the story it costs $140 million
Yes.
a year to bus kids around Boston. Not everybody agrees. The study was done by the MIT's Blueprint Labs, but that's a lot of money to save. On the other hand, I know neighborhood schools are controversial because there are some neighborhood schools that are better than others. So what do you make of this?
Okay, a couple things, and I feel like I keep going down rabbit holes, but this is really important. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's I want to just give some context. So first, that is a huge chunk of the budget. It is definitely one of our largest places where resources are going. If we were to wave a magic wand and switch to neighborhood schools, in fact, that budget item would not go away. When you break down that $140 million, a significant chunk is transportation that is mandated by law for students with disabilities, students who need including those who need a bus monitor on board to monitor medical conditions as they're getting to and from school. There's a requirement from what's called door-to-door service in that way as well. When you think about kind of yellow bus service in general, some folks might have an idea that you meet at a certain point, neighborhood kids walk to a certain point, get on the bus and get dropped off at the school. Door-to-door service is quite intensive because it often involves making sure students with mobility devices are secured properly, they're picked up from their homes in front of their own houses, and again, monitored and cared for the entire way. We are also providing transportation for other non-public schools as well, charter schools, parochial schools, who all have different start times that Boston Public Schools has not controlled. And so where our buses are sent, a significant part of that is outside of our control. One other last wrinkle in this is that the way that we have been structuring what's called special education or education for students with disabilities has in fact contributed to this and the poor outcomes, the disparate treatment and outcomes for students with disabilities, because many of the ways that we have been providing services have been school by school, a particular strand to serve a particular kind of need, whether it is autism or dyslexia, might be at a particular school. And therefore, those students have to be bused sometimes a long way to get to that school, rather than a commitment that every school must be available for every student and every school must be high quality for every student. That is a major change that we came to an agreement with in the teacher's contract this year, to completely reform how special education is structured, to put the funding and resources behind that. So we're in the process of reworking all of that right now, and that will be truly transformational, not only for the bus budget, but for families' choices and the experience and inclusion of students with disabilities.
Mayor Wood, and maybe it was in there, but if it was, my apologies. The underlying conclusion, beyond the fact that $140 million would not be saved, as you made pretty clear here, the underlying conclusion that busing did not improve academic performance in that. And as Marjorie said, there have been people on both sides. The people did the study and some have criticized it. Where do you fall in terms of the conclusions of the report?
Of whether we should take apart our bus
whether
system?
or not bus, whether their conclusion that busing did not improve academic performance. Do you buy that?
I mean, we need to make sure that, okay, let me back up and say, whatever the statistics say, I know the real life experience of families who are making decisions about where to send their kids are such that there's an understanding that certain schools are the ones that you should try to get into for your child. And sometimes the data backs that up. Sometimes the fundraising that each school is able to do backs that up as well. There are deep disparities across the district to this day. But our approach is that, one, untangling some of the factors that have led to these disparities, such as how we resource special education and supports for English language learners, as well as how our facilities are structured, because some folks say, it's not about the quality of the building, it's about the learning that happens inside. It is intimately connected. There's no other city in the country with the scale and density of resources to serve young people, from our academic and cultural partners to the business community ready to help. We haven't been able to plug everyone in because we haven't necessarily seen school buildings as the hub for an entire community's connection point. That's what we're doing through our facilities plan as well.
Want to take a call? I'm sorry, yes.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that's so great about neighborhood schools, obviously, is that, especially if you're a single mom or, you have a little community around your school, and I think that's one of the sad things that's missing in Boston. You can't have the woman next door watch your kids if you're going to stay late at work or something.
Yeah, in some way we see this play out, right? East Boston High School has been a remarkable story of test scores going up during the pandemic while there's been a tremendous struggle to work through, of attendance going up, enrollment going up, and some of that is their geography, that because it is a community that it's harder to get through the tunnel, especially these days, that naturally much of their local community feels it's very connected, is invested, and we want to feel that everywhere. Our plan for high schools is going to require every high school having something special to offer. And so in some ways, we want to be able to balance students having their full choice of that, but also creating the community and that sense of predictability of knowing where your child will end up.
We only have a few more minutes left. The mayor is kind enough to agree to stay till 2:30. Michaela in Whitensville, you are on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Michaela.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
What's up?
Hi, Mayor Wu.
Hello.
Hi. So I have a question on behalf of a big community of about 100 plus small business owners that sell on Copley Square during the spring, summer, and fall. So the rumor is that Copley Square is going to get a bit of a makeover, and we won't be allowed to have our markets there this season. I was just wondering, is that true? And if it is true, would you be willing to work with us to find another place to sell?
Thanks for calling, Michaela. I actually don't know if that's true or not. I don't know the exact timing of when potential infrastructure changes or the kind of renovations of the square might start. So I will find out that answer. But regardless of when it is, would love to make sure you all are connected to, if not Copley, because it's impossible, a location that we can continue benefiting from all of your services and support you all.
Mayor Wu, on a totally unrelated topic, I've said this on the air a couple of times. Every time a woman breaks a barrier like you did in your election, based on history, and then Maura Healey and Andrea Campbell and on down the list, we've talked about each of them. But the moment it really struck me, I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have moments like this in your life where you dig into something and you don't have time to step back. When we were at the Embrace the other day and we were talking to you, Marjorie's at one end, I'm at the other, we're talking to you, and all of a sudden Andrea Campbell showed up, and she showed up with Mayor Healey, and there's Mayor Wu, who made history, there's Maura Healey, who made history, there's Andrea Campbell, who made history, and the list, we could add another dozen, with 5 of the 6 constitutional officers being women. What is that? What do you feel about that? And how do you think that'll change the way our lives are? How do you think that'll change Massachusetts and our city and all that sort of thing? It's not just you anymore. It's a whole plethora of people.
It kind of hit me when I was in the House chamber during the governor swearing in. I was kind of sitting on the side next to all the Gold Star families and able to, not be facing this, but kind of sitting on the side so I was able to see the room and to just look around and witness the excitement. It really felt like this is a moment in history that I'm going to tell my kids about, my grandkids about one day. I was here when this happened, and I've had the chance to, for better or worse, right? It's all happening in recent years. It could have happened a long, long time ago. It should have happened a long, long time ago, but Congresswoman Presley's election nights, and we've been so ready for this moment for a long time. I think sometimes I'll speak with people who used to live in Boston or kind of came through Boston for school many years ago, and they're shocked, right, when they see me. And then I get the chance to tell them about how this is really representative of every level of government now. Of course, we have a lot more work to do, as always, but our cabinet and City Hall, our leadership in community, and I feel very blessed that at a time when the country is having such intense, difficult conversations, the hardest conversations for us are, how do we get it together here so that we can go as fast and far as we can? It's not often more often than not a question of what should we do, but how do we get it done now, and how do we make sure as many people as possible are included in that?
One last question. How was Sally Ting's donut?
Oh, it was great.
It was. It's Susan, by the way.
Oh, it's Susan.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Susan. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Susan is still here.
Susan
and
is here. Oh, Susan.
She told me that they're healthy.
Hi there.
So that's the best part.
Fabulous. You have 3 votes right here. Susan, my apologies. Thank you so much.
And
Mayor,
where are they from? In Needham.
Susan Ting in Needham, and I assume we Google you and something. We can't hear it. Tomorrow we'll say hey.
She says they're baked, not fried.
Oh, Everyday Bake Shop. I'm sorry.
Everyday Bake Shop.
Everydaybakeshop.com.
Jim,
Thank you very much,
here,
Jamie.
so we gotta move
we don't
on.
have a precise number.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Wu.
Yeah, thank
we
you
really
very,
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you so much.
And if I may be sexist, you look spectacular. State of the city. That really hit me. A woman in a beautiful dress coming out to address everybody. Thank you very much, Michelle Wu.
We haven't seen that before either, have we?
No,
I don't
have not
think
seen
so.
that
Yeah,
before. Again, thank you for your time. Okay, tomorrow we're going to be joined by our medical ethicist Art Kaplan, our national security expert Juliet Kayyem, food policy writer Corby Kummer, and naturalist author Cy Montgomery, plus Michael Kirk with a new Frontline. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Brendan Aditi, our engineer, John McClaw Parker, Brian Bell on the boards for us, executive producer Jay Bologna. Special thanks to the BPL team, Angelica